Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the gilded, perfumed, and frankly, quite treacherous world of 16th century France. We're going to be exploring the court of one of history's most formidable women, Catherine de Medici, and her alleged secret weapon, an elite group of female spies known as the Flying Squadron. This isn't your typical James Bond stuff. Think less exploding pens, more poisoned compliments and secrets whispered over a game of cards. It's a world where a misplaced glance could get you exiled, and a well-placed compliment could change the fate of the kingdom. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel find other history lovers like us. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the cold. It's a damp, insistent chill that seeps through the stone walls of your family's chateau. A chill that the sputtering fireplace in the great hall can't seem to conquer. The tapestry on the wall, depicting a heroic ancestor who probably never was, is faded and frayed at the edges, much like your family's title. You are of noble blood. Yes, but nobility without a healthy treasury is just a fancy word for well-dressed poverty. You trace the rim of your wooden cup, the rough grain of familiar comfort under your fingertips. Dinner was, as usual, a thin stew on stale bread. You read the classics. You can compose a passable line of poetry in Latin, and your needlepoint is exquisite, but none of that can patch a leaking roof or secure a respectable marriage. You have no dowry. In this world, that's a social death sentence. Your father sits across from you, his face a roadmap of worries, staring into the fire as if it holds the answers to his debts. Your mother is mending a gown that has been mended twice before. The silence in the room is heavy, broken only by the crackle of the logs and the sigh of the wind outside. It's on a night just like this, a night no different from 1,000 others, that the sound comes. A horse, hoofbeats, steady and fast, not the slow amble of a lost traveler. They stop right outside your gates. A single, authoritative knock echoes through the hall. Your father, startled, grabs the rusted poker from the fireplace. In these times, a visitor after dark is rarely good news. He creaks the heavy oak door open just a sliver, revealing a man cloaked against the night, his face obscured by shadow. He doesn't try to enter. He simply holds out a single, folded piece of vellum. It's sealed not with the cheap wax of a merchant, but with the deep burgundy wax of the royal court, and pressed into it is a crest that makes your breath catch, the intertwined CS and the crown of the Queen Mother, Catherine de Medici. The messenger says nothing. He places the letter in your father's trembling hand, turns, and is swallowed by the darkness. The hoofbeats fade, leaving a silence more profound than before. You all stare at the letter as if it's a venomous snake. The Italian woman, as her detractors call her, the merchant's daughter who became Queen of France, now the power behind the throne of her sickly son, King Francis II. She is the most powerful and, some whisper, the most dangerous woman in the kingdom. Historians today still argue fiercely over her legacy. Was she a pragmatic ruler holding a fractured France together, or a ruthless schemer who dabbled in poison and political assassination at this moment? She is a name, a legend, and her seal is in your rundown hall. Your father finally breaks the seal. The vellum is heavy, expensive. The script inside is elegant, precise. It's an invitation, not to a bull, not for a marriage interview. It's an offer for you, by name, to take up a position at the Louvre Palace, to become one of the Queen Mother's stills d'honneur maid of honor. It's a position of immense prestige, a chance to escape this slow decay. But it's also a step into a world of intrigue you can barely imagine. You think of the rumors you've heard from a passing cousin, tales of the royal court where the Queen Mother introduced a strange, two-pronged utensil from her native Italy for eating a fork, An object considered so unavingum dainty and effeminate by the gruff French nobility that using one was seen as a sign of moral weakness. This is the world you're being invited into, a place of alien customs, immense wealth, and unspoken rules. The letter promises security, a future, and service to the crown. It doesn't mention what that service really entails. Your mother sees a lifeline. Your father sees a trap. You see a choice. Stay here and watch the tapestries fray until they turn to dust, or step into the serpent's den. You look at your worn dress, then at the royal seal. The decision is already made. The journey to Paris is a blur of rattling carriage wheels and muddy roads, but the arrival is a shock to the system. The Louvre Palace isn't a building, it's a small, chaotic city unto itself. You step out of the carriage and are immediately swept into a human river flowing with purpose and perfume. Courtiers in silks and velvet stride past, their high collars starched and immaculate. Servants scurry with armloads of linens. Guards with polished halberds and impassively, their eyes missing nothing. The air hums with a dozen languages: French, Italian, Spanish, German, and buzzes with the sounds of construction. Queen Catherine, a great patron of architecture, is in the middle of a massive expansion project, and the clang of hammers on stone is a constant, energetic backdrop to the refined court life. It's overwhelming. Back home, the loudest sound was the wind. Here, the silence itself seems to have a weight. You and a handful of other new girls are led through a labyrinth of corridors to a suite of rooms. They are small, but they are yours. A real bed with clean sheets, a small window overlooking a courtyard, and a shared sitting room. It is more luxury than you have ever known. Your education begins the very next day, and your instructor is a woman named Madame de Clermont, a senior lady in waiting whose posture is as unbending as her expression. She is a walking icicle of protocol, and her first lessons are a whirlwind of minutiae. You do not walk. You glide, she instructs, her voice crisp. You do not look. You observe. You do not sit. You range yourself. You learn the subtle art of the courtier shallow, swift dip for a minor baron, a deeper, more respectful one for a duke, and a full, floor-sweeping reverence for royalty that feels like a pledge of eternal servitude. You learn who you are allowed to make eye contact with almost no one and whose presence requires you to become part of the wallpaper. You learn the precise way to hold a wine glass, how to open and close a font to convey a dozen different messages, and how to eat with the Queen Mother's bizarre Italian fork without looking like a peasant prodding a beetle. But this is just the surface layer, the formal curriculum. The real lessons happen in the afternoons, in the Queen Mother's private chambers. You sit with the other ladies in waiting, your heads bent over intricate needlepoint. The room is quiet, save for the whisper of silk thread passing through linen. The air is thick with the sweet, metallic scent of the lead-based foundation so many of the ladies use a popular cosmetic called Venetian CERUs. It creates a flawless, porcelain white complexion, a perfect mask that hides any blemish or emotion. It is also, though few admit it, a slow-acting poison, dulling the senses and damaging the skin over time. The perfect metaphor for court life. It is here, in the quiet of the sewing circle, that your true training begins. One afternoon, Madame de Clermont glides over to you. She doesn't look at your work, but at you. Mademoiselle, she says softly, her voice barely a murmur. You were in the West Gallery this morning. Were you not? The Duke of Guise was speaking with the Spanish ambassador. You nod, your heart beginning to beat a little faster. You remember the moment. You were fetching a book for another lady and had to pass them. The Duke seemed agitated. Madame de Clermont continues, her eyes still fixed on your face. Did you happen to catch any of his words? This is the test. To say you were eavesdropping would be a fatal admission. To say you heard nothing would be a lie. And she would know it. You choose your words carefully, just as you choose your threads. I only heard a fragment. Madame, you reply, keeping your eyes on your needlework. Something about a shipment being delayed. I did not wish to seem impertinent, so I hurried on. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touches her lips. Good, she whispers. To listen without appearing to listen. That is the first and most important art you will learn here. She then moves on to the next girl, leaving you with the chilling realization that your ears are now considered instruments of the state. Later that week, she gathers the new girls. You will hear talk. She says, her voice low and serious. Ugly rumors, spread by the Queen Mother's enemies. They have a name for us. They call us Les Squadron Volant, the Flying Squadron. They will claim the Queen uses her lady's beauty and charm for political ends, to pry secrets from powerful men. Historians will probably argue about this for centuries, whether it was a slanderous invention of Protestant propaganda or a genuine political tool. I am here to tell you it is a vile lie, born of jealousy. The Queen Mother simply values loyalty and discretion above all. She expects her ladies to be her eyes and her ears, to be aware of the currents in the court. That is your duty, to be observant, nothing more. She pauses, letting her words sink in. And if, in the course of your observations, a powerful man should become indiscreet in your presence because he is charmed by your wit or your grace, well, that is a failing on his part, not a design on yours. You are merely to listen, and to remember. You look around at the other girls, their faces pale in perfect masks of makeup, and you understand. You are being taught a weaponized form of paying attention. The curriculum has just begun. The name, once you hear it, seems to hang in the air everywhere. Les Squadron Volant, the Flying Squadron. Madame de Clermont dismissed it as a slander, a vicious rumor. But the more you observe, the more you realize that a rumor, even if false, has its own kind of power. It creates an aura, a mystique. You start to see how it works. When you and a few of the other ladies in waiting enter a room, a subtle shift occurs. Conversations lower to a murmur. Men, even powerful ones, seem to straighten their doubles. Their expressions a mixture of admiration and caution. They look at you, but they are thinking of the Queen Mother. You are a living extension of her influence. A beautiful, walking reminder that her eyes and ears are everywhere. The true nature of your mission isn't revealed in a grand pronouncement. It unfolds in a series of small, calculated moments, orchestrated by Catherine de Medici herself. One evening, she summons you to her private study. The room is dominated by a massive desk cluttered with maps, letters, and astronomical charts. The Queen Mother is not a young woman. Her face, framed by a severe black widow's peaked veil, is lined with the stress of ruling a kingdom on the brink of civil war. But her eyes are dark, intelligent, and miss nothing. She doesn't waste time with pleasantries. Mademoiselle, she begins, her Italian accent still noticeable, a constant reminder of her foreign origins that her enemies love to exploit. I am told you have a quick mind and a steady hand. She gestures to a small stool near her desk. As you sit, you notice an unusual object on a side table, a small, ornate globe. But instead of continents, it's a celestial sphere, mapping the stars and constellations. Catherine was famously reliant on her astrologer, Cosimo Ruggieri, a man whispered to be a sorcerer by some. Whether she truly believed he could predict the future or simply used astrology as a psychological tool to intimidate her rivals is a question historians still debate. For you, seeing the celestial globe confirms that this is a woman who believes in unseen forces and hidden patterns. She pushes a letter across the desk towards you. It's from a provincial governor. A long-winded report filled with flattery and excuses for why his tax revenues are late. Read this, she commands. You read it aloud, your voice clear and steady. When you finish, she looks at you expectantly. Well, what do you see? This is another test. He praises your wisdom and leadership. Your Majesty. You begin, choosing the safe, standard answer. Nonsense. She cuts in, her tone sharp but not unkind. Any fool can read the words. I want you to read the man. He uses 3 full sentences to describe the poor harvest, one for the floods. But he buries the news of a Protestant meeting in his largest town in a single subordinate clause at the end of a paragraph about repairing a bridge. What does that tell you? You pause, your mind racing. You're not just translating words anymore, you're deciphering intent. It tells me he considers the Protestant meeting unimportant. You venture. Well, he wants you to think it is unimportant. Catherine leans back, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Precisely. He is either an idiot, or he is hiding something, possibly even sympathizing with them. His letter tells me nothing, but his writing of the letter tells me everything. She then explains her predicament. The kingdom is a tinderbox, divided between the Catholic majority and the growing Protestant or Huguenot minority. The great noble houses, the Guise and the Bourbon, are using this religious strife to advance their own power, threatening to tear the country apart and usurp the authority of her sons. She cannot trust the official reports from her governors, who are often allied with one faction or another. She needs a different kind of information, unfiltered, honest. The men of this court, she says, her voice laced with a weary cynicism, are peacocks. They strut and display their feathers. They fight for dominance. They are so busy posturing for each other that they forget who is watching. They see a pretty face, a graceful dance partner, a sympathetic ear, and they see a woman. They see someone inconsequential. They relax. They let their guard down. They boast. They complain. They reveal their ambitions, their fears, their secrets. She looks at you, her gaze intense. Your needlepoint is excellent. Your courtesy is flawless. But your true value to me, and to France, is not in your hands or your knees. It is in your mind. You are not a guard. You are not a servant in the traditional sense. You are my intelligence, or you will move through this court. You will attend the balls, the hunts, the dinners. You will smile. You will listen. And you will report what you hear, not gossip, facts, alliances, discontent. She stands up and walks to the window, looking out over the dark silhouette of Paris. They call you the Flying Squadron because you seem to float through the court, light and beautiful. Let them underestimate you. A butterfly that lands on a general's map can learn more than a spy hiding in the bushes. Your battlefield is the ballroom. Your weapons are your wit, your discretion, and the foolishness of ambitious men. Do you understand your purpose now? You look at the woman who holds the fate of a nation in her hands, who navigates a world of treachery with a blend of ancient superstition and cold political calculus, and you finally understand. You are not just a maid of honor. You are a spy. Your first assignment feels deceptively simple. Wrapped in the glittering finery of a court banquet, the great hall of the Louvre is ablaze with the light of 1,000 candles, their flames reflecting in the polished silver plates and the jewels adorning the guests. The air is a rich tapestry of scents, roasted meats, expensive perfumes, and a faint, waxy smell of the candles themselves. A small orchestra plays a lively galliard, and the sound of laughter and conversation echoes off the high, vaulted ceilings. It's a scene of opulent celebration, but you now see it for what it is: a meticulously arranged chessboard. Catherine herself is seated at the head table, a regal and unmoving black-clad figure amidst a riot of color. She doesn't need to speak to command the room, her presence is enough. Your target for the evening is a man who seems utterly harmless, the Baron de Courtauld, a landowner from the south, a Chias of Florida. Talkative man in his late 50s, his doubled a bit tight, his face perpetually flushed with wine and self-important. Your briefing, delivered by Madame de Clermont in a hushed tone earlier that day, was precise. The Baron's lands are strategically unimportant, she had explained, that they produce an unusual amount of grain. His official tax records, however, show a yield that is consistently modest. The Queen Mother suspects he's underreporting his harvest and selling the surplus to agents from the Spanish Netherlands. one of our biggest rivals. This is not just tax evasion, it's borderline treason. Your mission is not to accuse him or to find a hidden ledger. It is simply to listen, to give him the opportunity to incriminate himself. He is vain, Madame de Clermont had concluded. He loves to complain, but he also loves to boast. Find the seam between the two and pry it open. You are seated 2 places down from him at one of the long trestle tables. For the first part of the meal, you follow your training perfectly. You are quiet, demure, speaking only when spoken to. You laugh politely at the jokes of the gentleman next to you. You expertly navigate the complex meal, which includes a particularly tricky dish, ortolan buntings. These tiny birds were a delicacy, captured, fattened, and then drowned in armagant before being roasted whole. The traditional way to eat them was to cover your head with a large napkin, supposedly to concentrate the aromas, but also, cynically, to hide your face from God while you consumed such a delicate creature. As you see men around you draping their napkins over their heads, you realize this court is a rule for everything, even shame. You wait for your moment. It comes when the Baron begins complaining, as predicted, about the weather. A terrible year, he booms to his neighbor. Simply terrible. The rains came at the wrong time. The sun was too shy. It's a miracle we harvested anything at all. This is your cue. You turn to him, your expression a carefully crafted mask of sympathy and wide-eyed interest. Don't, Monsieur le Baron, you say, your voice soft and deferential. That sounds dreadful. It must be so difficult to manage such vast lands with the heavens themselves conspiring against you. The Baron, who had barely noticed you before, now swivels in his seat, preening under the attention. Oh, mademoiselle, you understand. It is a constant struggle, a battle, and the king's taxes. They do not account for such hardships. No, not at all. You lean in slightly, creating a small bubble of intimacy in the noisy hall. But you are known for being such a clever administrator. Baron, I heard someone say that you work miracles with your land, that even in a poor year, your ingenuity ensures your granaries are never truly empty. It's a calculated risk, a gentle prod, your ear appealing to his vanity, offering him a chance to pivot from complaining to boasting. It works. A sly grin spreads across his face. He lowers his voice conspiratorially. Well, he whispers, his breath smelling of wine. One must be creative. The official tithe is for the official harvest. But a wise farmer knows that some fields are not on the official maps. Some harvests happen after the assessor has gone home. Your heart gives a little thump. This is it. You maintain your naive expression. Oh, but how is that possible? Are the king's assessors not very thorough? He chuckles, delighted by your apparent innocence. My dear child, the king's men see what I want them to see. Let's just say I have very good friends over the border in Flanders who appreciate a well-timed delivery of French grain. They pay in good, solid silver, not in the king's flimsy paper promises. It's simply good business, a way to survive in these difficult times. He winks at you, convinced he has impressed a pretty young woman with his cunning. He has no idea that he has just confessed to treason, and that his words, every last one, will be transcribed in a neat, precise script and placed on the Queen Mother's desk before the sun rises. You murmur something about how clever he is and gracefully turn your attention back to your plate. Your face a perfect picture of polite indifference. You've just drawn your first blood, not with a dagger, but with a well-aimed compliment. The game, you realize, has truly begun. Having proven your aptitude for subtle interrogation, you are now drawn deeper into the court's inner workings. The Queen Mother's sewing circle begins to feel less like a hobby and more like a daily briefing room. Here, amongst the gentle rustle of silken thread, the complex political landscape of France is laid bare. Catherine, or sometimes Madame de Clermont, will speak in hypotheticals and allegories, but the meaning is always clear. You learn to stop seeing individuals and start seeing factions, each with its own sidles. colors, and deeply entrenched animosities. The two titans looming over the French court are the House of Guise and the House of Bourbon. To an outsider, they are just two wealthy, powerful families. To you, they are the opposing poles of a magnet, pulling the entire kingdom into their spheres of influence and threatening to tear it apart. You are taught to recognize them on sight, not just by their faces, but by their symbols and the colors they wear. The Guise family are the champions of ultra-Catholicism. They are rich, powerful, and deeply, fanatically devout. Their leader, Duke Francis of Guise, is a celebrated war hero, a man whose popularity rivals that of the king himself. His brother, Charles, is the cardinal of Lorraine, a shrewd and manipulative churchman who wields immense influence, both in France and in Rome. When you see them in the halls of the Louvre, they are a formidable presence, always surrounded by a retinue of stern-faced allies. They favor rich, dark colors, deep reds and blacks on their family crest, featuring the double-barred cross of Lorraine, is everywhere. You learn to associate them with an unbending rigidity, a belief that any concession to the Huguenots is a pact with the devil. They seek Catherine, with her Italian pragmatism and her willingness to negotiate, as dangerously soft in their eyes. You, her maid of honor, are a servant to a heretic in waiting. Their smiles are thin, their civility a brittle veneer over a core of cold judgment. On the other side are the Bourbons. They are princes of the blood, with a direct, though somewhat distant, claim to the French throne. Their leaders, Antoine de Bourbon, king of the small kingdom of Navarre, and his more fiery younger brother, Louis, Prince of Conde, are the leading figures of the Huguenot faction. Unlike the Guise, they are not a monolithic bloc. Antoine is a notorious vassal later, his religious convictions seeming to shift with the political winds. Historians still puzzle over his motivations, debating whether he was a man of weak character or a pragmatist trying to navigate an impossible situation. Conde, however, is a man of action, charismatic and ambitious. The Bourbons and their allies often wear simpler, more sober clothing, a subtle nod to Protestant austerity, though they are no less wealthy. Their followers are a mixed bag of devout reformers and opportunistic nobles, who see the new religion as a convenient way to challenge the authority of the crown and the Guise. When you see them at court, they are often on the fringes, watchful and tense. They are the opposition, and their very presence is a challenge to the established order. Your job is to move between these two worlds. One day, you might be tasked with delivering a message to the Duchesse de Guise, a simple pleasantry from the Queen Mother that is actually a carefully calibrated probe. You enter her apartments, a space of oppressive piety, dark wood, and the heavy scent of incense. You exchange polite inanities, all the while taking a mental inventory of who is present, what maps are unrolled on the table, and the general mood of the household. The tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The next day, you might be instructed to accidentally drop your handkerchief near a group of young gentlemen known to be in the Prince of Conde's circle. The act of one of them retrieving it for you creates a brief, socially acceptable moment of interaction. In that fleeting exchange, you might offer a carefully worded, seemingly innocent comment about the recent sermons in Paris, and gauge their reaction. Do their eyes light up with fervor? Do they glance around nervously? Do they dismiss it with a cynical joke? Every nuance is a piece of data. You learn a strange and specific piece of courtly knowledge, the language of the stools. At court, not everyone was entitled to sit in the presence of royalty. A duchess might be granted a tabouret, a simple stool, as a mark of high favor. Who was granted a stool, who was denied one, and who sat on a stool and whose private chambers became a complex and public barometer of political favor. You watch as Catherine masterfully plays this game, bestowing and withdrawing this simple privilege to reward allies and subtly punish enemies, sending ripples of gossip and speculation through the court without saying a word. You might be asked to note who visited the cardinal of Lorraine's chambers and whether the Duchesse de Nemours was offered a stool, a seemingly trivial detail that could signal a new alliance. You are living in a world of dual meanings. where a conversation about poetry can be a debate about theology, and a compliment about a new gown can be a warning. The guys and the bourbons are like two great beasts circling each other, and you, a small, seemingly insignificant figure in the Queen Mother's retinue, are tasked with charting their movements, listening for the shift in their breathing, and anticipating the moment one of them decides to lunge. Your senses, already sharpened by your initial training, are now honed to a razor's edge. You begin to understand that the most important conversations at court don't happen in the grand halls or the council chambers, they happen in the liminal spaces. The in-between places where people believe they are unabused of. The art of tittying eavesdropping is your new, unspoken subject of study, and the palace itself is your classroom. The Louvre is a drafty, sprawling architectural monster. It is a place of grand facades and hidden vulnerabilities. You learn its secret geography, its network of servants' passages, its forgotten stairwells, and, most importantly, the deceptive properties of its decorations. The heavy tapestries that adorn the walls, so beautiful and stately, are your greatest allies. They are hung on frames that leave a gap of several inches between the fabric and the cold stone. This space, designed for air circulation to prevent mildew, creates a perfect acoustic pocket. From behind a depiction of a mythological hunt, the hushed, conspiratorial tones of the plotting noblemen become surprisingly clear. Your challenge is not just to get behind the tapestry, but to do so without causing a single ripple in its heavy fabric, and to breathe so silently that your own presence is undetectable. You practice in your quarters, holding your breath for longer and longer intervals. You learn to move with a liquid grace, placing your feet heel to toe to minimize sound. You learn to recognize the telltale creak of a specific floorboard, the groan of a particular door. These are the sounds of security, the palace's own alarm system, and you learn to navigate around them. One of your first real tests of this skill comes unexpectedly. You are sent to retrieve a bolt of Italian silk from a storage room in a quiet wing of the palace. As you approach, you hear voices from a nearby antechamber, a small, richly appointed room often used for private meetings. The door is slightly ajar. Peeking through the crack, you see the Duke of Guise himself. His back to you, speaking in low, urgent tones with two of his most trusted military commanders. This is not a conversation you are meant to hear. Your heart pounds against your ribs. Retreating now is the safest option, but the opportunity is too valuable to ignore. Along the corridor wall hangs a long, narrow tapestry depicting the lineage of the Valois kings. It's not ideal, it's smaller than the grand ones in the main halls, but it will have to do. With painstaking slowness, you slip behind it. The space is cramped and dusty, the wall scratches your cheek, and the smell of ancient dust and damp fills your nostrils. You force yourself to control your breathing, taking shallow, silent sips of air from your hiding place. The Duke's words are muffled but discernible. He is angry, his voice a low rumble of frustration. Not enough, he is saying. The Queen Mother's tolerance is a poison. She allows the Huguenot heresy to fester. Every day we wait, it grows stronger. They are arming themselves in the south. I have reports. But an open move against them without the king's full support would be seen as rebellion. Another voice replies, Tome, more cautious. The king is a boy, ruled by his mother. The Duke spits. We must force her hand. A demonstration. Something to show the crown that the Catholic nobility of this kingdom will not stand for this appeasement. We need to find a pretext, an incident that will light the spark. You press yourself flatter against the cold stone, willing yourself to become invisible. They are not just complaining, they are planning. They are looking for a trigger, an event that will allow them to launch an attack on the Huguenots and present it as a righteous necessity. This is intelligence of the highest order. The conversation shifts to logistics, troop movements, and names you quickly commit to memory. After what feels like an eternity, the men leave. You wait, counting to 500 in your head. Your body stiff and aching before you dare to move. You slip out from behind the tapestry, smooth down your dress, and proceed to the storage room. Your mind racing, you retrieve the silk, your hands acting on autopilot. Later, you learn a fascinating and bizarre tidbit about palace acoustics. Some rooms were rumored to have been constructed with listening tubes built into the walls, a primitive form of intercom that allowed conversations to be overheard from a neighboring chamber. While historians debate the prevalence and effectiveness of such devices, the rumor alone was a powerful tool. The fear that one could be overheard at any time was a constant check on careless talk. It's possible these were just stories, but you start to notice strange decorative rosettes on the walls of certain meeting rooms and wonder if they conceal more than just plaster. That evening, you report what you heard, not to Madame de Clermont, but directly to Catherine herself. You repeat the conversation verbatim, listing the names, the locations, the Duke's palpable anger. She listens without interruption, her face an unreadable mask. When you are finished, she simply nods. You have done well, she says, her voice calm. Go, get some rest. She does not tell you what she will do with this information, but in the coming weeks, you notice a subtle shift in the court. A series of royal decrees are issued, reaffirming the crown's authority over all military matters. Commanders loyal to the Guise are suddenly reassigned to distant and important border posts. The pretext the Duke was looking for never seems to materialize. You realize you have done more than just listen. You have become a firebrand, helping the Queen Mother to extinguish a spark before it could become a blaze. Your duties often bring you into the orbit of the royal family itself, and you come to understand that the heart of Catherine's power, and her greatest vulnerability, lies with her children. The throne of France is occupied by her eldest son, Francis II, but he is less a king and more a fragile, gilded placeholder. He is a boy of 16, physically weak and chronically ill. His entire life has been a series of coughs, fevers, and ailments, serving him as a delicate, often heartbreaking task. You see him in his private chambers, a world away from the pomp of the throne room. He is often pale and listless, overwhelmed by the heavy robes of state and even heavier weight of responsibility. His marriage to the young, beautiful, and vivacious Mary, Queen of Scots, was a major political coup, tying France and Scotland together. But in private, their dynamic is less one of a power couple and more of a vibrant, healthy young woman and her sickly companion. Mary is charming and intelligent, but she is also a Guise through her mother. Her uncles, the Duke of Guise and the Cardinal of Lorraine, use their niece's position as queen consort to exert immense influence over the young king. They are constantly at his side, filling his head with their ultra-Catholic agenda, effectively holding him a willing captive. This is the central challenge of Catherine's political life. She is the Queen Mother, but her direct access to her son, the king, is often blocked by the very men she sees as the greatest threat to the kingdom's stability, so she plays a longer, more subtle game. You are part of that game. When you are assigned to attend the young Queen Mary, your task is twofold. Officially, you are there to serve her. Unofficially, you are there to be a quiet, calming presence, a representative of the Queen Mother's faction in a chamber dominated by the Guise. You watch Catherine's methods with a mixture of awe and fear. She cannot command her son to defy the Guise, as his will is too weak. Instead, she manages him through his health and his routine. She consults with his physicians daily, personally overseeing his diet and his rest. Is it the genuine concern of a lover or the calculated control of a master strategist, ensuring her most important asset remains functional? Historians have argued this point for centuries, with some painting her as a devoted parent and others as a cold puppet master. From your vantage point, you see that it is, terrifyingly, both. She loves her son, but she also uses his very frailty as a political tool. A crisis can be an opportunity. When the king is suffering from one of his frequent tearaches or fevers, Catherine can insist on absolute quiet and solitude. effectively barring the guys from his chambers for days at a time. During these periods, she is the sole gatekeeper. Any documents requiring the king's signature must pass through her hands. She can delay a decree she dislikes. Claiming the king is not well enough to be troubled with matters of state, she can expedite one she favors. Presenting it during a moment of his lucidity, you see her seated by his bedside, not speaking of politics, but soothing his brow with a cool cloth. All the while a stack of state papers rests on a nearby table, waiting for the opportune moment. You also learn about one of the more peculiar medical treatments of the era, to combat the king's severe headaches and ear infections. His physicians would sometimes employ trepanation, the drilling of small holes into the skull to relieve pressure. This was an incredibly dangerous and often fatal procedure. A more gentle and bizarre alternative you witness involves a freshly killed pigeon. The bird would be split open and placed, still raw, over the afflicted area of the king's head, with the belief that it would draw out the evil humors causing the sickness. Seeing the strange, grim remedy applied to the sovereign of France is a stark reminder of how precarious life, medicine, and power truly are in this age. You are there the day the king stumbles in the corridor, fainting from a sudden, sharp pain in his head. An infection in his ear has worsened dramatically. Panic ripples through the court. The guys see their influence slipping away with the king's life force. The Bourbons and other Huguenot sympathizers watch and wait, their hopes for a more tolerant successor rising. The entire political future of France hangs on the fever of one sick boy. In this moment of crisis, Catherine is a rock. She takes absolute control. She locks down the royal apartments, admitting only her most trusted physicians and servants, including you. You spend your days changing linens, brewing herbal infusions, and simply being a silent witness to the slow, inexorable decline. You watch Catherine sit by her son's bed for hours on end, her face a stoic mask, but her eyes filled with a grief she allows no one else to see. You see the guy's brothers trying to force their way in, desperate for the dying king to sign one last edict giving them regency powers, only to be blocked at the door by Catherine's guards. She is protecting her son in his final moments, but she is also protecting the throne for her next son, the 10-year-old Charles. She is a mother losing her child and a queen securing her dynasty. All in the same breath. The line between the two is impossible to find. In the tense and mournful atmosphere following King Francis II's death, the court does not stop. It merely recalibrates. The new king, Charles IX, is a child. Catherine, at last, secures the position she has been maneuvering for all along regent of France. Her power is now official, but it is also more precarious than ever. The guys are furious at being sidelined, and the Bourbons are pressing their advantage, demanding more concessions for the Huguenots. The kingdom is a powder keg, and Catherine needs to know her enemies' plans before they can act. This is where your skills are tested in a new, more dangerous way. Your mission involves a letter, not a domestic report from a bumbling baron, but a piece of high-stakes international correspondence. Intelligence suggests that the Duke of Guise, frustrated with his loss of influence at the French court, has been in secret communication with King Philip II of Spain. Philip is the most powerful monarch in Europe, a staunch and ruthless defender of Catholicism. An alliance between the Guise and Spain would be a disaster for Catherine, effectively creating a foreign-backed fifth column within her own kingdom. A courier, a trusted man-at-arms in the Guise household, is set to depart from Madrid within the week. Your task is to intercept his dispatch, discover its contents, and replace it without anyone ever knowing the seal was broken. This is a level of espionage far beyond listening behind a tapestry. Madame de Clermont summons you to a secluded room deep within the palace. On the table are several items: a block of burgundy wax identical to the one used by the Guise, a small, sharp knife, a metal needle, candle, and a replica of the Guise family signet ring. The courier will stop at an inn called the Tired Pilgrim on his first night out of Paris, she explains, her voice low and steady. One of our agents, the innkeeper's wife, will ensure he is served wine laced with a strong, but harmless, sleeping draught. You will have a window of no more than 1 hour. She then shows you the technique, a skill that feels like dark magic. Breaking a wax seal is easy, opening it without a trace is an art. First, you don't break the seal itself. You carefully heat the blade of the knife and slide it under the vellum flap, on the opposite side of the seal, where the paper is glued down with a light adhesive. The heat gently melts the glue, allowing you to lift the flap. Even this is risky, too much heat and the paper will scorch. The true artistry comes in way sealing it. But what if the original letter must be read without this option? Madame de Clermont shows you the most delicate part of the operation. She takes a sample letter sealed with the guy's wax. Instead of attacking the paper, she attacks the seal itself. She takes the thin metal needle, heats it in the candle flame until it glows faintly, and then carefully, patiently, begins to push it through the center of the wax seal, directly through the thickest part of the embossed crest. Wax is brittle, but it is also soft. She murmurs, her concentration absolute. You do not drill, you melt. A tiny, imperceptible tunnel. Once the needle has passed all the way through, she works it back and forth, slightly widening the channel. Then, she shows you how to roll the letter so tightly that it can be slid out, painstakingly, through this tiny tunnel in the wax. It seems impossible, a trick for a stage magician. The idea that a skilled operative could extract a full sheet of vellum through a hole the size of a knitting needle is a testament to the era's ingenuity in espionage. Historians still find it hard to believe, yet contemporary accounts describe such methods. It was the 16th century equivalent of data theft. Your mission, however, is simpler and more direct. You are to use the heated knife method. Once the letter is open, you are to copy its contents precisely. Another member of the squadron, a girl with a talent for forging handwriting, has already prepared a harmless replacement letter full of pleasantries. You will place the fake letter inside, reseal the flap with a tiny amount of fresh adhesive, and get out. The night of the operation is nerve-wracking. Dressed as a simple serving girl, you are led by the innkeeper's wife to the courier's room. He is slumped over the table, fast asleep, an empty wine jug beside him. The dispatch pouch lies on the bed. Your hands tremble as you open it. There it is, the letter, with the proud, arrogant seal of the guise. The room is lit by a single candle, its flame dancing and casting long, menacing shadows. You work quickly, your heart hammering in your chest. The heated knife feels clumsy in your nervous fingers. You hold your breath as you slide it under the flap. A wisp of smoke, a faint smell of burning glue, and it's open. You unroll the venom. The Duke's handwriting is an angry, slanted scroll. The words are even worse than Catherine feared. He is offering to raise his own troops to cleanse the southern provinces of the Huguenot plague, if King Philip will provide the gold. He details his supporters, his resources, and his contempt for the Queen Mother's regency. It is a clear-cut plan for treason. You copy the key phrases onto a tiny scrap of paper hidden in your sleeve. Then, you take out the forged letter, fold it, and place it inside the original vellum. You apply the new adhesive, press the flap down, and pray it holds. It looks almost perfect. You place the letter back in the pouch, put the pouch back on the bed exactly as you found it, and slip out of the room. The courier will wake up in a few hours with a headache, blaming it on the strong country wine. He will ride on to Madrid and deliver a letter of meaningless flattery, and the Queen Mother will now hold a copy of his master's treason, a weapon she can use at a time of her choosing. You walk back to the palace under the cold light of the moon, no longer a girl learning the rules, but a player who has just stolen the enemy's queen. With the immediate threat of the guy's Spanish plot neutralized, Catherine focuses on a different kind of strategy spectacle. She understands that power isn't just about secret letters and backroom deals, it's about perception. To project an image of a stable, prosperous, and unified France under Valois-Ullin to distract her feuding nobles. She throws a series of lavish festivals and celebrations that become legendary throughout Europe. Your role in the flying squadron shifts accordingly. Your new hunting ground is the party. The court moves to the magnificent Chateau de Fontainebleau, a sprawling palace surrounded by forests, a fantasy world of grottos, fountains, and Catherine is transforming it into a showcase of French culture and power, a stark contrast to the grim, military atmosphere of the Guise strongholds. For a few weeks, the bitter rivalries are meant to be set aside, replaced by masques, ballets, tournaments, and feasts. But you know better. The festivities are just another battlefield, one fought with wit, charm, and coded gestures instead of swords. Your mission during these events is to be a social barometer. As you mingle with the guests, you are a walking, talking intelligence gathering device. The Queen Mother needs to know who is dancing with whom, who is refusing to speak to whom, which ambassador seems overly friendly with which faction. The most insignificant social slight can be a sign of a shifting alliance. One night, there is a grand mosque where everyone wears elaborate costumes and masks, pretending to be gods and goddesses, nymphs and satyrs. The theme is the classical world, a safe, neutral ground. The anonymity of the masks, however, makes people bolder. It's your job to recognize people not by their face, but by their voice, their posture, their jewelry. You drift through the torchlit gardens, your own simple nymph costume allowing you to blend in. You see a figure dressed as Mars, the god of war, speaking intimately with someone dressed as Diana, the huntress. By the man's broad shoulders and the woman's distinctive pearl earrings, you identify them as a Guise allied general and the wife of a supposedly neutral German prince. Their hushed conversation in a secluded alcove is a red flag. You don't need to hear the words, the meeting itself is the message. Catherine was a master of theatrical productions, and her festivals were famous for their incredible special effects. Medici. These were engineered by Italian artists and architects and were unlike anything the French court had seen. In one famous water pageant, a giant mechanical whale would swim across the lake, with singers hidden inside. In another, an entire fortress made of pastry and spun sugar would be wheeled into the banquet hall, only to be attacked and devoured by the guests. These spectacles were incredibly expensive and often logistically nightmarish. There's a comical account from one of Catherine's festivals where a troupe of actors dressed as satyrs had their flammable goat hair costumes catch fire from a straight torch, causing a panic that nearly ended in disaster. It's a quirky, almost slapstick reminder of the very real dangers that lurked beneath the glittering surface of these events. Amidst the splendor, you are assigned a specific task. A young nobleman, the Vicomte d'Urin, a prominent Huguenot, has been showing signs of wavering in his loyalties. He is handsome, idealistic, and, Catherine suspects, easily swayed. Your job is to engage him, not as a target for seduction, but as a friend. You are to be a sympathetic ear, representing the Queen Mother's moderate faction. You find him near the Grand Canal, watching the floating lanterns drift on the dark water. You happen to be there as well, and you strike up a conversation, starting with the beauty of the festival. You speak of the Queen Mother's desire for peace, her hope that art and beauty can unite the kingdom where politics has failed. He is wary at first, conditioned to see anyone from Catherine's inner circle as a potential enemy. But you don't press him on matters of religion or allegiance. You talk about poetry, about his home in the south, about the hunt planned for the next day. You are patient. You are simply a pleasant companion. Historians still argue about the exact nature of the flying squadron's work. Was it purely intellectual espionage, or did these encounters, as Catherine's enemies claimed, often cross the line into physical intimacy? The Protestant propaganda of the time painted you and your sisters as courtesans, using your bodies to ensnare good men. The truth, as you experience it, is far more nuanced. The power lies in the possibility, in the subtle flirtation and the creation of emotional intimacy. The threat is often more effective than the execution. With Turin, your weapon is understanding. He eventually opens up, complaining about the radicalism he sees growing in his own Huguenot party. He fears their leaders are becoming as dogmatic and uncompromising as the guys. He feels trapped in the middle, loyal to his faith but not to the political ambitions of its leaders. The Queen Mother, you say gently, believes there is a third way. A French way, not Catholic or Protestant, but simply French. You are planting a seed, an idea of loyalty not to affection, but to the crown, and to the pragmatic woman who wears it. You leave him that night knowing you have given him much to think about. You have not extracted a secret or foiled a plot. You have done something more delicate. You have begun the slow, tearful work of winning a heart and a mind. In the midst of the fireworks and the music, under the gaze of 1,000 masked faces, you are fighting a quiet battle for the soul of the nobility, one conversation at a time. The influx of information is constant. Whispers from the garden, boasts from the banquet table, confessions from the dance floor. It all flows back to the Queen Mother's chambers. But raw data is useless. It's a chaotic jumble of truth, lies, exaggerations, and misunderstandings. Your next crucial lesson is in discernment. You must learn to distinguish actionable intelligence from distracting court gossip. And for this lesson, your teacher is Catherine herself. She summons you and two other girls from the squadron to her study late one evening. The room is quiet. The usual throngs of petitioners and secretaries gone. On her desk, instead of maps or state papers, are 3 small, velvet-covered books. She gestures for you to sit. This morning, she begins, her voice tired but sharp. I received 3 reports concerning the Admiral de Coligny. Gaspard de Coligny was one of the most respected Huguenot leaders, a man of noble birth and stern, unwavering conviction. He was a formidable figure, and Catherine watched him closely. Mademoiselle de Leonie, she says, nodding to the girl on your left, reported that she overheard 2 ladies discussing the Admiral's wife. They claim she has sold her personal jewelry to buy weapons for the Huguenot cause. Mademoiselle de Vaugeois, she continues, turning to the other girl, reported that a German merchant, recently arrived at court, was heard complaining that the Admiral's agents outbid him for a shipment of high-quality steel from Bavaria. And you, she says, her dark eyes finally resting on you, reported that you observed the Admiral in the chapel yesterday, a Catholic chapel. You noted that he did not kneel, but he stood respectfully in the back for the duration of the service. She leans forward, her hands clasped on the desk. 3 pieces of information about the same man. Now, tell me, which of these is gossip, and which is intelligence? Mademoiselle de Leonie speaks first, confidently. The reports about the jewelry, Your Majesty. It speaks to his funding and his wife's devotion. It is a sign of their commitment. Catherine gives a small, dismissive wave of her hand. It is gossip. 2 ladies chattering. Did they see the transaction? Do they know the jeweler? Or are they just repeating a story they heard from a cousin who heard it from a servant? The story is potent. It creates an image of fanaticism, which is why it travels so fast. But it is not effect. It is noise. It tells me more about the lady's anxieties than it does about Coligny's finances. Next, she looks at Mademoiselle de Vaudreuil. The German steel. That is intelligence. Surely, the girl says, it is specific. A named commodity, a location. It suggests he is arming his followers. Closer, Catherine concedes. It is a data point. It is useful, but it lacks context. Is he buying steel for swords? Or for plowshares? Is it for 1,000 men? Or for the new gates on his chateau? It is a lead, a thread to be pulled, but it is not yet the whole tapestry. It could lead to a conspiracy, or it could lead to a construction project. Finally, she turns to you. Her gaze is intense, and you'll report the Admiral in the chapel. What is the value of that? You choose your words with care, remembering her lesson about reading the man, not the words. Its value is in what it shows of his character. Your Majesty. The other reports are about what he is doing. Mine is about who he is. His enemies paint him as a godless heretic who would burn every church in France. But his actions show a man who, while firm in his own faith, is capable of showing respect for ours. It suggests he is a man who might be reasoned with. It tells us that the propaganda against him may be a lie, which is, in itself, a crucial piece of intelligence. A slow smile spreads across Catherine's face. It's a rare sight, and it holds more warmth than you expected. Precisely, she says. The first report was a rumor, designed to stir emotions. The second was a fact, but its meaning is ambiguous. Yours is an insight. It gives me a clearer picture of my adversary's mind, and in this game, understanding your opponent's mind is the key to victory. She explains that this is the most common mistake an intelligence can make, falling in love with sensational stories. The court thrived on salacious gossip. A secret affair, a gambling debt, a drunken argument, these were the currency of daily conversation. And while sometimes useful for blackmail or leverage, they rarely touched the true levers of power. True intelligence, she teaches, is often boring. It's found in shipping manifests, in the subtle changes in a diplomat's vocabulary, in who stands where during a royal procession. She tells you about a strange, and likely apocryphal, story that nonetheless serves as a lesson. It was said that one of her spies once spent a month trying to decipher a complex code used by the Spanish ambassador, only to discover it was just his weekly grocery list. The point, Catherine stresses, is to avoid seeing conspiracies everywhere. You must be cynical, yes, but also sober and realistic. Do not tell me what you think the Spanish are planning, she instructs. Tell me what their ambassador had for dinner, and who he shared it with. The former is speculation, the latter is a fact. We will build our strategy on a foundation of facts, not on a castle of fears. This lesson sticks with you. It changes the way you listen. You begin to filter the noise, to let the juicy, exciting rumors wash over you while you strain to catch the mundane, concrete details that hint at larger truths. You are not a novelist, crafting a dramatic story. You are a mosaic artist, collecting small, dull, disparate pieces of stone, knowing that if you gather enough of them, you can arrange them into a true and devastatingly clear picture. The world of the flying squadron is one of high stakes and quiet triumphs, but it is not without its perils. You operate without a safety net. If you make a mistake, the Queen Mother will disavow you. You are, by necessity, deniable assets. This chilling reality becomes terrifyingly clear when one of your own, a girl named Isabelle de Lamuel, falls into danger. Isabelle is one of the most brilliant and daring members of the squadron. She is beautiful, quick-witted, and possesses a recklessness that sometimes borders on the self-destructive. Her long-term assignment was one of the most difficult to charm and gather intelligence from Louis, Prince of Conde, the charismatic and ambitious military leader of the Huguenot faction. It was a classic honey trap operation, though no one at court would ever use such a crude term. The assignment was, for a time, a stunning success. Conde, a known womanizer, was utterly captivated by Isabelle. He showered her with gifts and, more importantly, with secrets. In his desire to impress her, he boasted of his plans, his allies, and his resources. Isabelle, in turn, relayed a steady stream of high-value intelligence back to Catherine. But the line between performance and reality began to blur. Isabelle, tasked with feigning affection for the dashing prince, found herself genuinely falling for him. This is the cardinal sin of your profession. The one Madame de Clermont warned you about in hushed, severe tones. Emotional attachment clouds judgment. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you predictable. The situation comes to a head when Isabelle discovers she is pregnant with Conde's child. This is a catastrophe of the highest order. A child would expose the entire affair, disgracing her and potentially implicating the Queen Mother. Turned, for his part, reacts poorly. The public revelation of a Catholic mistress and an illegitimate child would damage his standing as a virtuous Protestant leader. He panics and, in a moment of cruel self-preservation, publicly denounces Isabel. He claims she tried to bewitch him, that she was a temptress sent by the Italian serpent, Catherine, to corrupt him. He casts her aside, leaving her ruined, pregnant, and alone. The scandal explodes across the court. The Huguenot faction seizes upon it as proof of Catherine's wicked methods, painting Isabel as a harlot and spy. The Guise faction, for once, playfully agrees, using the affair to highlight the moral depravity of the royal court under Catherine's influence. Isabel is caught in the crossfire, a pawn in the very game she was meant to be playing. Catherine is furious, but her anger is cold and pragmatic. Isabel has become a liability. The standard procedure would be to cut her loose, to send her to a remote convent to live out her days in disgraced obscurity. It would be a brutal but clean solution. You and the other girls in the squadron are terrified. You see in Isabella's fate your own potential future. But then Catherine does something unexpected. She decides to save her. Why historians debate her motives. Was it a flicker of maternal compassion for the girl she had placed in harm's way, or was it a calculated move to maintain morale and loyalty within her squadron? To show that she would not abandon her agents, perhaps she simply couldn't stand to let Com win so decisively. Your role in this rescue mission is small but critical. The plan is not to exonerate Isabel, her reputation is beyond repair, but to manage her retreat and neutralize the damage. You are tasked with spreading a counter-rumor. It's a subtle, insidious piece of work. You don't defend Isabella's virtue. Instead, you express sympathy for the poor, naive girl who is so overcome by the prince's famous charm. You whisper to ladies in waiting from neutral families. It's a sad story, isn't it? He pursued her relentlessly. One can hardly blame a young heart for being so foolishly captured. The goal is to subtly shift the narrative. Instead of coming spy seduces virtuous prince, you are creating a new story. Predatory nobleman takes advantage of innocent girl. It won't save her name, but it muddies the water. It tarnishes Conde's victory by painting him as a cad rather than a victim. While you are managing the narrative, other agents are at work. A quiet financial settlement is arranged. Isabel is given a generous sum of money, not from the royal treasury, but from Catherine's personal Medici account, making it untraceable. Arrangements are made for her to travel to a private estate in the countryside, far from prying eyes, where she can have her child in secret. You also learn a curious piece of related tradecraft: the use of sympathetic ink or lemon juice for secret messages. A message written in lemon juice is invisible once it dries. When the paper is gently heated over a candle, the writing reappears as a brown script. During this crisis, you see one of the Queen's secretaries receive a blank-looking piece of paper, hold it carefully over a brazier, and watch as a message materializes. It's a simple but effective technology for secure communication, ensuring that plans for Isabel's disappearance cannot be intercepted. Your final task is to see Isabel one last time. You visit her in her sequestered rooms. She is pale and broken, a shadow of the vibrant woman she once was. She looks at you, her eyes filled with shame and fear. "He said he loved me," she whispers. It's a heartbreaking confession. You have no words of comfort that don't sound like a lie. You simply hand her a small, heavy-personed letter with her travel instructions. You are a cog in the machine that is saving her, but you are also a cog in the machine that broke her. As you leave her, you are struck by the cold, hard reality of your world. Loyalty is a weapon, love is a liability, and survival is the only true victory. The fallout from Isabella's affair reinforces a stark reality: the religious divide is the wound through which the entire kingdom is bleeding. Catherine, ever the pragmatist, knows she cannot govern effectively without understanding both sides of this chasm. While the court is overwhelmingly Catholic, a significant and growing number of nobles, artisans, and intellectuals have embraced the Protestant faith. These are the Huguenots. and to most of the court, they are a shadowy monolith of heretics. Catherine needs a more nuanced picture. This leads to one of your most dangerous and delicate assignments, to make contact with the Huguenot community within the palace and its environs. This isn't about targeting a high-level leader like Courtauld or Coligny. It's about understanding the rank and file. What do they truly believe? What are their fears? Are they the revolutionary fanatics the guys claim they are? Or are they simply subjects who want the freedom to worship as they please? Your point of contact is an unlikely one, the royal apothecary, a man named Master Embour. He is a quiet, scholarly man who has served the royal family for years, respected for his knowledge of herbs and medicines. He is also, secretly, a Huguenot. His position gives him a unique level of access and trust throughout the palace. Catherine knows his secret. She knows everything but has allowed him to remain, finding his skills too valuable to lose. This is a classic Catherine maneuver, tolerating a problem as long as it remains useful. Whether her tolerance was a sign of genuine open-mindedness or just cold political calculations, a question that continues to fuel historical debate. Madame de Clermont instructs you to feign a series of persistent headaches. This gives you a legitimate reason to visit the apothecary's workshop frequently. The workshop is a world unto itself, a small, fragrant room tucked away in a quiet corner of the Louvre. The air is thick with the scent of dried lavender, chamomile, and countless other herbs hanging from the rafters. Shelves are lined with glass jars containing strange powders, tinctures, and oils. It feels like a magician's lair, a place of quiet science in a court that runs on superstition. Master Embour is a gentle, serious man with kind eyes. You describe your symptoms, and he listens patiently, preparing a simple herbal tea for you. During your first few visits, the conversation is purely professional, but you are planting a seed of familiarity, building a rapport. You speak of your childhood in the countryside, your knowledge of simple folk remedies, showing a respect for his craft. The breakthrough comes when you accidentally leave behind a book of poetry. It's a work by Clement Marot, a famous poet whose works were beloved by the royal court, but whose Protestant sympathies were well known. Leaving it was a signal, a quiet way of saying, I am not one of the fanatics. The next time you visit, he has the book ready for you. As he hands it back, he says softly, Marot also translated the Psalms. His versions are very beautiful. They speak directly to the heart, without the need for Latin. This is the opening. The Huguenot cause was, at its core, about accessibility. It was about reading the Bible in French, about singing psalms in a language everyone could understand, about a direct relationship with God without the complex hierarchy of the Catholic Church. A strange and fascinating offshoot of this was the Huguenot attitude towards naming children. While Catholics stuck to saints' names, many devout Protestants began naming their children after Old Testament figures Abraham, Isaac, Esther as a way to signal their faith. A sudden rise in the number of baby Abrahams in a particular town could be a subtle clue for the Crown's intelligence network that Protestantism was taking root there. You seize the opportunity. I should like to hear them sometime. You reply, your voice equally quiet. A few nights later, a trusted servant delivers a message. You are to go to a specific address in the Faubourg Saint-Germain, a district outside the palace walls. You are to wear a simple grey cloak and ensure you are not followed. The risk is immense. If you are caught attending a secret Protestant service, you could be accused of heresy yourself. Following the instructions, you find yourself in the back room of a printer's shop. The air smells of ink and paper. About 20 people are gathered. Men and women from all walks of life, a university student, a silk merchant and his wife, a few palace guards. There is no priest, no altar, no incense. They simply stand together in the dim candlelight and sing. They sing Marot's psalms in French. Their voices are not polished or trained, but they are filled with a raw, powerful emotion you have never heard in the grandest royal chapel. It's a sound of pure, unadorned faith. After the singing, a man reads a passage from a French-language Bible. and they discuss its meaning. They talk about their community, about helping a member whose business is struggling, about their fears of the guys. There is no talk of rebellion or overthrowing the king. There is only a deep desire to be left alone, to practice their faith in peace. You say nothing. You just listen and observe. You see their piety, but you also see their fear. They are not the monsters of guys' propaganda. They are ordinary people caught in the great, grinding gears of history. You report your findings to Catherine. You describe the scene, the songs, the quiet dignity of the gathering. You tell her that, from what you saw, the greatest threat they pose is not their ambition, but their conviction. This information is invaluable to her. It confirms her belief that a path of moderate accommodation is the only way to avoid a bloody civil war. She must find a way to protect these people, not because she shares their faith, but because their destruction would mean the destruction of France. Your headache-filled trips to the apothecary have given her a window into the soul of her opposition, a perspective that no amount of battlefield reconnaissance could ever provide. Your successes have not gone unnoticed. You have proven yourself to be resourceful, discreet, and courageous. Now, Catherine decides to deploy you in a more direct, and far more precarious, role. You are no longer just a listener and observer. You are to become a lure. The target is Sir Nicholas Throckmorton, the English ambassador. He is a seasoned and wily diplomat, fiercely loyal to his own queen, Elizabeth I. Relations between France and England are, as always, a complex dance of rivalry and reluctant alliance. Catherine needs to know Elizabeth's true intentions. Is she genuinely seeking peace? Or is she secretly funding the Huguenots to keep France weak and divided? A long-standing English foreign policy goal. Throckmorton is the key. But he is a professional. He will not be tricked by simple questions or be caught whispering secrets behind a tapestry. He has, however, one perceived weakness: a noted appreciation for beautiful, intelligent women. This is the door Catherine intends for you to open. The mission is laid out by Madame de Clermont, her tone more serious than ever before. The Queen Mother wishes you to cultivate a friendship with Ambassador Throckmorton. You will be seated next to him at the upcoming state dinner. You will dance with him at the ball. Your task is to charm him, not with cheap flirtation, but with your mind. He is a man of letters. Speak to him of Petrarch. He fancies himself a political philosopher. Discuss Machiavelli with him, but be careful to attribute any controversial ideas to the Florentine author. Never to yourself or the Queen Mother. This is a delicate and dangerous game. Your every word, every smile, every glance will be a carefully rehearsed line in a play. You spend days preparing. You read up on English politics. You study the summits you are to discuss. You practice the pavone, a slow, stately court dance, ensuring your movements are flawless. The night of the state dinner, you feel a knot of anxiety in your stomach. Throckmorton is an imposing man, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seem to see right through the courtly facade. He is polite but reserved at first, offering the standard diplomatic pleasantries. You follow your script, gently guiding the conversation away from the treacherous ground of politics and towards the safer realm of culture. You mention that you have been reading Sir Thomas Wyatt's translations of Petrarch's sonnets, a subtle compliment to English literary taste. His eyes light up with genuine interest. He is a true intellectual. And for a moment, the cautious ambassador is replaced by an enthusiastic scholar. He begins to speak passionately about the challenges of translation, the difficulty of capturing the spirit of a poem in another tongue. You listen. You ask intelligent questions, and you allow him to impress you. Later, at the ball, he requests a dance. As you move through the elegant, formal steps of the pavone, he leans in, his voice low. It is a rare pleasure, mademoiselle, to find a mind as sharp as yours at this court. It is a relief from the usuals, frivolities, and it is a pleasure to speak with someone who values words. Your Excellency, you reply smoothly. In a world of so many words, true meaning is often hard to find. This is your opening. Over the next few weeks, you build a careful rapport. You happen to meet in the royal library. You walk in the gardens. The conversations are always stimulating, always circling the edges of the true topic. He never says anything overtly treasonous or revealing. He is far too clever for that. Your goal is not to get him to hand you a state secret, but to read the subtle shifts in his mood and priorities. Does he seem more relaxed after a courier arrives from London? Does he tense up when the Duke of Guise enters the room you are watching for the small tells that betray the bigger picture? The true nature of this work is psychological. You are creating an atmosphere of trust and admiration, hoping that in a moment of comfort, he will let something slip. One evening, walking through the torchlit gardens, the conversation turns, as you had planned, to the nature of power. You mention Machiavelli's The Prince, which Catherine had famously brought with her from Italy. The book was scandalous, a manual for ruthless statecraft that horrified and fascinated all of Europe. A cynical book, Throckmorton says, watching your reaction. It argues that it is better for a ruler to be feared than to be loved. Perhaps, you counter gently, but it also argues that a ruler must avoid being hated. A fine distinction. Is it not fear can be a tool, but hatred is a poison that destroys the one who wields it. You are, of course, paraphrasing Catherine's own philosophy. He looks at you, a new respect in his eyes. And then, he gives you the small nugget you have been working for. Queen Elizabeth, he says, almost musing to himself, understands this. She has no love for the Huguenot cause. She finds their sermons dreary and their leaders arrogant. But she fears a France united under the heel of the Guise even more. A strong Guise means a strong alliance with Spain. And a Spanish-backed army across the Channel is her nightmare. It's not a confession. It's an observation. But it's everything Catherine needs to know. It confirms that Elizabeth's support for the Huguenots is not ideological, it's purely strategic. She's not trying to start a religious war. She's trying to maintain a balance of power. This allows Catherine to calibrate her own policies, knowing she can negotiate with the Huguenots to a certain point without England intervening, as long as she keeps the Guise from becoming too powerful. The conversation moves on, but you have your prize. You have succeeded in your role as a lure. It is an exhausting, nerve-wracking performance. Historians still debate the morality of using women in this way, with some viewing Catherine as a proto-feminist who empowered women by giving them access to the world of politics and espionage, and others seeing her as exploitative, using her ladies as pawns in a cynical game. As you walk back to your chambers, the ambassador's compliments still ringing in your ears. You don't feel empowered or exploited. You feel like a tool, a very sharp, very effective, and very dangerous one. You have won the exchange, but you feel a small, cold piece of your own sincerity has been spent in the process. Just as you feel you've mastered the rules of the game changes. The new king, Henry III, the third of Catherine's sons to wear the crown, brings with him a dramatic shift in the court's culture and power dynamics. Henry is intelligent, cultured, and deeply devout, but he is also eccentric and surrounds himself with a clique of flamboyant male favorites known as Les Mignons, the Darlings. These are not the grim, bearded warriors of the older generation. The Mignons are young, handsome noblemen who serve as the king's bodyguards. Confidence, then fashion icons. They are famous for their outrageous style. They wear elaborate lace collars, silk stockings, and high-heeled shoes. They bleach and curl their hair, wear makeup, and douse themselves in expensive perfume. They are walking works of art, and they immediately become the new center of the court's universe, much to the disgust of the traditional, hyper-masculine nobility. The Duke of Guise and his followers look upon them with open contempt, seeing them as symbols of the king's decadence and moral corruption. For you and the flying squadron, the rise of the Mignons presents a new and unexpected challenge. They are now your direct competitors for the most valuable commodity at court, the king's ear. Where Catherine once relied on you to gather information and subtly influence the political currents, Henry now turns to his minions. They have unparalleled access to him, sharing his private dinners, attending his council meetings, and guarding his bedchamber at night. Your mission adapts. You are now tasked with spying on the spies. You must infiltrate the circle of the minions, or at least get close enough to understand their rivalries, their ambitions, and, most importantly, what they are whispering to the king. This is more difficult than charming an aging baron or a foreign diplomat. The minions are a tight-knit group, fiercely loyal to Henry and suspicious of outsiders. They have their own language of inside jokes and coded phrases. They see the flying squadron not as potential allies, but as rivals from the Queen Mother's old world. You witness the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, power struggle between Catherine and her son's favorites. She will host a magnificent ball, a classic display of her power and taste, only to have Henry and his minions pointedly arrive late, dressed in a style that deliberately clashes with the theme, drawing all attention to themselves. It's a passive-aggressive war fought with fashion and etiquette. One of the most prominent minions is the dashing but arrogant Duke of Ypernon. He is clever, ambitious, and has the king's complete trust. He becomes your new target. You cannot use the same tactics you used on Throckmorton. Ypernon is not interested in Petrarch, he is interested in power. Your approach is indirect. You befriend his younger sister, a quiet, observant girl who is often overlooked amidst her brother's glamour. Through her, you gain entry into their social circle. You attend their private parties, which are very different from Catherine's stately affairs. They are smaller, more decadent, filled with gossip, gambling, and the latest scandalous songs. It is in this environment that you learn about a peculiar and dangerous trend among the minions dueling. While dueling had long been a part of noble culture, Henry's favorites elevated it to a bloody art form. They would fight over the slightest perceived insult or misplaced word. A rival's more fashionable doublet. These weren't formal jousts, they were vicious, often fatal. Street fights with rapiers and daggers. There's a famous, brutal duel in 1578, where 6 men, 3 of Henry's minions, and 3 from the Guise faction fought, leaving for deadened to gravely wounded. The king was heartbroken, commissioning magnificent tombs for his fallen friends. Historians are divided on the meaning of this dueling craze. Was it a sign of a society in decay? A crisis of masculinity among nobles with no foreign wars to fight? Or was it an extreme, albeit bloody, form of political theater? A way for factions to test each other's strength and resolve without declaring open war. You use this culture of honor and insult to your advantage. At a small gathering, you witness Ypernon in a heated argument with another minion over a gambling debt. The other man, the young count, insults Ypernon's honor. A challenge is issued. A duel is set for the following dawn. This is the kind of information that is normally kept secret until after the fact. You report it immediately, but Catherine's response surprises you. She does not want you to stop the duel. She wants you to use it. The king is blind to Ypernon's ambition. She tells you. He sees a loyal friend. I see a man who would be king himself if he could. Let the duel proceed. But I want you to ensure that word of it reaches the Guise. It's a shockingly cynical move. You are to leak the time and place of the duel to the Duke of Guise's people. The Guise faction despises the minions and would relish the chance to see them kill each other. But they also see themselves as the guardians of public order. Your leak creates a dilemma for them. If they ignore it, they allow the king's favorite to engage in a banned and dishonorable brawl. If they intervene and report it to the city watch, they will be seen as titulators and cowards. But they will also publicly embarrass Ypernon and the king. You pass the information through a trusted channel, a laundress whose brother is a guard in the Guise household. As predicted, the Guise, after much debate, choose to anonymously tip off the city watch. Just as Ypernon and his rival are about to draw their swords in a misty field outside Paris, the watch arrives and arrests them both for breaking the king's own edict against dueling. The fallout is perfect. Ipernon is publicly humiliated. The king is forced to reprimand his favorite. The guys look like defenders of the law. And Catherine, the architect of the whole affair, remains completely in the shadows. You have successfully played the new power against the old, using the Mignon's own arrogance and the guys' self-righteousness as your weapons. It's a masterful piece of political judo, and it proves that even in this new, bewildering court, the old Queen Squadron can still pull the strings. The years of navigating shifting alliances, foiling minor plots, and managing courtly egos have all been a prelude. Now, the low, rumbling storm that has been tranced for a generation is about to break with terrifying force. The air in Paris grows thick with a tension that is more than just summer heat. It is the summer of 1572, and you are about to witness the event that will forever define Catherine de' Medici's reign in the street. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. The city is dangerously overcrowded. A temporary truce has been called in the religious wars, and Catherine has orchestrated what she hopes will be the ultimate act of reconciliation, a royal wedding. Her daughter, Marguerite de Valois, a Catholic princess, is to marry the young Huguenot king, Henry of Navarre, leading Bourbon. The idea is to literally unite the warring factions in marriage. To celebrate, the entire Huguenot nobility has been invited to Paris for the wedding. They have come by the thousands, flooding the city's inns and noble houses. On the surface, it's a time of celebration. The wedding itself is magnificent, is slightly awkward, or so, but you, with your trained senses, can feel the discord beneath the pageantry. The mood in the street is not festive, it's resentful. The common people of Paris are staunchly, fanatically Catholic. They watch the arrival of these powerful Huguenot lords, their sworn religious enemies, with suspicion and hatred. They mutter about the obscene cost of the wedding, about the king welcoming heretics into the heart of the capital. The city feels like a sealed pressure cooker. You and the flying squadron are on high alert. Your tasks are no longer about charming diplomats or deciphering letters. You are now focused on threat assessment. You move through the crowds in the streets, listening to the sermons of radical priests who preach that the wedding is an abomination in the eyes of God. You report back on the growing number of armed militia organized by the Guise faction, who claim they are just there to keep the peace. A few days after the wedding, the unthinkable happens. The Admiral de Calangi, the most respected Huguenot leader, is shot from a window as he walks down the street. The assassination attempt fails. He is wounded in the arm and hand, but he survives the shot. However, shatters the fragile peace. Panic erupts. The Huguenot nobles are outraged, convinced the Guise were behind the attack, and possibly the king himself. They gather, armed and furious, demanding justice. They threaten to take matters into their own hands. The Guise and their Parisian mobs, in turn, are spoiling for a fight. Seeing the Huguenots' anger as a threat, the city is on a knife's edge. You are in the Louvre when the news arrives. The palace is thrown into chaos. You see Catherine, King Charles IX, and their closest advisors locked in a series of frantic, desperate meetings. What happened in those council meetings on the night of August 23rd is one of the most fiercely debated subjects in all of French history. Did Catherine and the king, fearing a Huguenot uprising and a new civil war, make a cold, calculated decision to launch a preemptive strike against the Huguenot leadership, or did they lose control of the situation, giving a panicked, ambiguous order that was then briefly and brutally misinterpreted by the Guise and their followers? The traditional narrative, fueled by Protestant survivors, paints Catherine as the black-hearted villain, calmly ordering the wholesale slaughter of her enemies. More recent historians suggest a more chaotic picture: a panicked government, terrified of a coup, making a desperate decision to neuter the Huguenot threat by assassinating a few dozen of its leaders. They never intended for it to spiral into a city-wide massacre. Your proximity to power gives you a terrifying, ground-level view of the decision-making. You don't see a calm, plotting villain. You see a queen mother who looks older and more terrified than you have ever seen her. You see a young, unstable King Charles IX, who was known to have a strange fascination with hunting and blood, being pushed and pulled by his advisors. You hear shouts and arguments from behind the closed doors of the council chamber. You hear the Duke of Guise's voice, loud and insistent. Late that night, the decision is made. The city gates are to be closed. The royal guard and the Guise militia are given lists of names, the key Huguenot leaders who are to be eliminated before dawn. The signal for the attack to begin is to be the ringing of the bell at the church of Saint Germain l'Auxerrois. You are not told the full extent of the plan. You are simply given a new, chilling order. There are a few Huguenots that Catherine deems valuable. Henry of Navarre, the new royal son-in-law, is one. The Prince of Conde is another. A few others, who possess useful skills or knowledge, are also on a protected list. Your task, should the situation deteriorate, is to help ensure their safety within the Louvre itself. As the night deepens, a dreadful silence falls over the palace. You wait. You know something terrible is coming. You look out a high window over the sleeping city of Paris. The streets are dark and quiet, but it feels like the silence of a held breath. You finger the simple cross you wear around your neck, a habit from childhood, and wonder if there is any prayer that can stop what is about to be unleashed. The church bell has not yet rung, but in the oppressive quiet of that pre-dawn hour, you can already hear the ghosts of the thousands who will not live to see the sunrise. The bell of Saint Germain l'Auxerrois begins to toll, its deep bronze voice cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. It is not a gentle call to prayer. It is a frantic, urgent clang, a sound that rips the city from its slumber. Almost immediately, it is answered by other church bells across Paris, a discordant, terrifying chorus that signals the beginning of the horror. From your position inside the Louvre, the first sounds are muffled shouts and the splintering of wood as the king's guard, led by the Duke of Guise himself, storms the apartments of the wounded Admiral de Coligny. You don't see it, but you hear the stories whispered in horrified tones moments later, how they dragged the old admiral from his bed, killed him, and threw his body from the window to the courtyard below, where the Duke of Guise contemptuously nudged the corpse with his boot. This single, brutal act is the spark. The organized, targeted assassination of the Huguenot leadership spirals, almost instantly, into an uncontrollable frenzy of popular violence. The Guise militia and the Parisian mob, whipped into a state of religious hysteria, need no further encouragement. They begin to swarm through the streets, hunting down not just the noblemen, but any man, woman, or child suspected of being a Huguenot. Your mission changes in a heartbeat. You are no longer an intelligence, you are a shield. The Louvre itself becomes a strange, terrifying mix of fortress and slaughterhouse. Many Huguenot nobles were staying within the palace walls as guests of the king, a fatal miscalculation of royal hospitality. No, they are trapped. The palace guards, sworn to protect them, turn into their executioners. You hear screaming from the courtyards, the clash of steel, the desperate pleas for mercy. Your specific task is to help locate and secure a man named François de Leonie, a respected Huguenot captain known for his military prowess and, unusually, his moderate views. He is on Catherine's valuable list, not because she likes him, but because she knows that if there is to be any hope of peace after this bloodshed, she will need men like him to negotiate with. He is an asset to be preserved. You, along with one of the king's trusted minions, who has been given the same orders, must navigate the chaos of the palace. The corridors you once glided through are now scenes of carnage and mayhem. You flatten yourself into a darkened alcove as a group of guards drag a screaming nobleman past, his fine silk nightshirt stained with blood. The smell of fear and death is everywhere. You find de Leonie in his chambers, barricaded behind a heavy oak table, his sword in hand, preparing to sell his life dearly. He sees you and the king's minion, and his face hardens, assuming you are his assassins. I am not here to harm you, the minion says, his voice strained, his own face pale. "By order of the king and the queen mother, you are to be protected." Leonie now Yuri looks at you, his eyes searching for the truth. He has seen you at court, a quiet, observant figure in Catherine's circle. Your presence seems to confuse him more than the Magnan's words. You give a small, almost imperceptible nod. It's a tiny gesture, but in this moment of life and death, it carries immense weight. He lowers his sword, his shoulders slumping in a mixture of relief and disbelief. Your task is to guide him to the Queen Mother's private chapel, one of the few places in the palace that has been declared an inviolable sanctuary. The journey is a short but terrifying trek through the heart of the storm. You move quickly and silently, using the same servants' passages you once used for eavesdropping, now using them for survival. As you pass a window overlooking the River Seine, you see something that will haunt your dreams forever. The bodies of the dead are being thrown into the river, so many that they seem to jostle against each other in the current. The water is tinged with red in the growing light of dawn. The massacre has taken on a grim, almost festive atmosphere in the streets. People are pinning white crosses to their hats to identify themselves as Catholic. It's a simple, terrifying symbol of allegiance. There's a bizarre and documented detail from that night in the chaos. The provost of the merchants ordered the city's street to be lit, not as a deterrent, but supposedly to make it easier for the killers to recognize their prey. It's a chilling example of civic infrastructure being co-opted for mass murder. You reach the chapel. It is crowded with a handful of other saved Huguenots, including the newly widowed Henry of Navarre and the Prince of Conde. They are terrified, disarmed, and utterly at the mercy of the woman who orchestrated their friends' deaths. Catherine is there, a still, black-clad figure, her face an unreadable slate. She is not triumphant. She looks exhausted, like a sorcerer who has summoned a demon she cannot control. You have succeeded in your mission. You have saved one man from the deluge. But as you stand in the quiet of the chapel, the screams from the city still filtering through the thick stone walls, you feel no sense of victory. The massacre will rage for 3 days in Paris, and in the weeks to come, it will spread to other cities across France, leaving thousands dead. The fragile hope of reconciliation is not just broken, it is drowned in blood. The wedding that was meant to unite two faiths has instead birthed a massacre, and you were a guest, a witness, and, in your own small way, an unwilling participant in the carnage. The nature of your service to the Queen has been laid bare in the most brutal way imaginable. In the chilling silence that follows the storm, Paris is a city in shock. The immediate, frantic violence has subsided, leaving behind a landscape of grief and paranoia. The stench of death hangs in the air, a grim miasma that even the strongest perfumes of the court cannot conceal. The street. Bartholomew's Day massacre is over, but its aftershocks will reshape the political and psychological landscape of France for a generation. Your work, and Catherine's, is far from done. Now begins the desperate, grueling work of damage control. The official narrative from the Crown shifts almost immediately. The first story, put out in the heat of the moment, was that the king had narrowly thwarted a Huguenot plot to assassinate the royal family. It was a lie, but a necessary one to justify the initial killings to the other courts of Europe. Catherine now tasks her network, including you, with the subtle but crucial job of reinforcing this narrative while simultaneously trying to calm the still simmering tensions. Your assignments are a strange mix of the morbid and the mundane. You are sent on errands of mercy, delivering food and blankets to Catholic families who were disrupted by the Troubles. These are public acts of charity, designed to show the Crown's compassion and restore a sense of normalcy. But your real job is to listen. How are people reacting? Is there still a thirst for more violence? Or is there exhaustion and regret? You report back that the mood is sour, a volatile cocktail of tridomylhycems and fear of reprisal. Catherine herself is a whirlwind of activity. She writes letters to every monarch in Europe, each one a masterpiece of spin, tailored to its recipient. To the militant Philip I of Spain, she presents the massacre as a glorious Catholic victory over heresy. to the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I of England. She frames it as a tragic but necessary act of state security, emphasizing that it was a political, not a religious, act. It is a breathtaking display of diplomatic maneuvering. One of your most unsettling tasks is to attend the interrogation of the surviving Huguenot leaders, Henry of Navarre and the Prince of Conde. They are held in luxurious captivity within the Louvre. You are present, ostensibly as a lady-in-waiting, while King Charles IX, his sanity visibly fraying, confronts them. He offers them a stark choice: convert to Catholicism or die. It is not a negotiation. It is a threat delivered with the wild-eyed fervor of a man haunted by his own actions. You watch as Henry of Navarre, the pragmatic survivor, agrees to convert with a calculated show of reluctance. The Prince of Conde holds out longer but eventually capitulates. You are witnessing the birth of a new political animal in Henry of Navarre, a man who learns the hard way that survival sometimes requires the sacrifice of one's public convictions. In the midst of this high-stakes drama, you become aware of a bizarre, almost ghoulish cottage industry that springs up in the wake of the massacre. Jewelers and trinket makers begin producing commemorative items, small medals celebrating the defeat of the heretics, woodcuts depicting the death of Kalinji. The most sought-after of these macabre souvenirs were supposedly slivers of bone or teeth, taken from the most prominent victims. Whether most of these relics were genuine is highly doubtful, but their popularity speaks to the depths of the sectarian hatred. The market for these items becomes a strange intelligence source, a way to gauge the mood and allegiances of those who buy them. Historians are deeply divided on Catherine's role in this aftermath. Was she the architect of the chaos, coolly manipulating events to her advantage, or was she a master of crisis management, desperately trying to put a broken kingdom back together after her initial plan went horribly wrong? The evidence can be read both ways. You see both sides. You see the cold calculation in the letters to foreign kings, but you also see her late at night, poring over maps, her face etched with exhaustion, trying to prevent the massacre in Paris from igniting a full-scale civil war across the entire country. She sends you on a mission to speak with the wife of a moderate Catholic nobleman, a man whose support she needs to build a new centrist faction, a party of politicians who value national unity over religious purity. Your job is to reassure her, to tell her that the Queen Mother is horrified by the excesses of the mob and is committed to restoring order and justice. Use it with this woman in her silent, somber drawing room. She looks at you, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and accusation. How can there be justice after this, she asks, her voice barely a whisper. God has abandoned France. You offer the words Catherine gave you, speaking of stability, of the future, of the king's desire for peace. But the words feel hollow, like ashes in your mouth. You are selling a product piece that you are no longer sure you believe in. You have seen the machine of state-sponsored violence up close, and you know how easily it can be switched on. As you leave, you realize that the massacre has changed everything, not just for France, but for you. The innocent girl who arrived at court years ago is gone, replaced by a woman who has walked through blood and lies. You have served your queen. You have helped her navigate the treacherous currents of power, but you are now part of the history of that bloody week. Your hands are not stained with blood, but you helped to set the stage. You held the candle. You comforted the survivors. You are inextricably linked to the event that will forever be a dark stain on the soul of France. In the years that follow the massacre, a fragile, haunted peace settles over the court. The great ideological battles have been replaced by a quiet, grinding war of attrition. The work of the flying squadron continues, but the stakes feel both lower and higher. The grand conspiracies have given way to personal intrigues. Yet the potential for a single misstep to reignite the flames of war is ever present. It is in this environment of weary vigilance that you face the one danger Madame de Clermont never prepared you for: a genuine emotional connection. Your assignment is a long-term one, focused on a young nobleman from the south, Marc-Antoine de Villene. He is a minor figure, but he holds a unique position. He is a Catholic, But his family has a long history of protecting the Huguenot communities on their land. His mother was a known Protestant sympathizer. He is a true moderate, a man trusted by both sides, which makes him both a valuable potential ally for Catherine and a target of suspicion for the hardline Guys faction. Your mission is to cultivate his trust, to understand his network, and to ensure his loyalty remains with the crown, not with any extremist faction. Unlike your other targets, Marc-Antoine is not a vain baron, a wily diplomat, or an arrogant bigot. He is quiet, social, and possesses a gentle sincerity that is utterly out of place in the cynical world of the Louvre. He is a gifted musician who plays the lute, and he has a wry, self-deprecating sense of humor. He seems to see the court for the theater of the absurd that it is. Your relationship develops slowly, over months. It begins with conversations about music. You happen to be in the music room when he is practicing. You talk about the differences between the Italian lute and the Spanish vihuel. You share a love for the melancholic songs of the poet Ronsard. These are not calculated conversations from a script. You find yourself genuinely interested. He is a breath of fresh air in the stale, perfumed atmosphere of the palace. He, in turn, seems drawn to you not just as a pretty face from the Queen Mother's circle, but as a kindred spirit. He sees a sadness in your eyes that mirrors his own. One evening, sitting in a quiet window seat overlooking the gardens, he speaks of the massacre. He was a boy then, but he remembers the terror, the friends his family hid in their cellars. I don't understand how God could have allowed it, he says, his voice low. And I don't understand how men who claimed to serve him could have committed such acts. He looks at you, expecting the standard, cautious reply about state necessity. Instead, you find yourself telling him the truth, or a version of it. I was here, you say softly. I don't understand it either. In that moment of shared vulnerability, a line is crossed. This is no longer an assignment. You report back to Madame de Clermont. Of course, you relay Marc-Antoine's political leanings, his contacts, his views. You do your duty, but you omit the details of your conversations, the growing sense of personal connection. You are compartmentalizing your life, and the wall between the spy and the woman is beginning to crack. You start to look forward to your time with him with an eagerness that frightens you. You feel a pang of jealousy when you see him speaking with another lady in waiting. You are exhibiting all the signs of the one thing you cannot afford: an emotional attachment. You remember the fate of Isabelle de la Muelle, cast aside and ruined when her affair with Con became a liability. The danger of your situation is highlighted by a curious court custom. The Queen Mother, in an attempt to foster a sense of unity and, cynics would say, to keep everyone under her watchful eye, would often command ladies and gentlemen of the court become each other's valentines for the year. This was a platonic, public pairing, involving the exchange of small gifts and poems. It was a formal, ritualized version of friendship, by Catherine's decree. You are publicly paired with the dour, elderly count, while Marc-Antoine is paired with a giggling, empty-headed girl from a Guys elite family. It's a constant, public reminder that your affections are not your own to give. You must exchange pleasantries with the old count while your heart aches watching Marc-Antoine be entertained as a signed valentine. The relationship deepens in secret. You find quiet corners, stolen moments. He writes you a song, not a grand declaration, but a simple, beautiful melody that speaks of finding a rare flower in a field of stone. It's the most precious thing anyone has ever given you. You know you are playing with fire. If your true affection for him is discovered, your value as an objective intelligence will be nullified. Worse, your relationship could be used as a weapon against him. The Guys faction is always looking for leverage. A secret love affair between a moderate nobleman and one of the Queen Mother's spies could be twisted into a tale of conspiracy, ruining his reputation for neutrality and placing him in real danger. Your love, far from being a sanctuary, could become his death warrant. You are caught in an impossible trap, one of your own making. Every instinct you have honed as a spy tells you to pull back, to treat him as just another target, to use his affection for you as a tool. But your heart, a part of you that you thought had been numbed by years of cynicism and fear, refuses to obey. For the first time, you are not just acting a part, you are living it. And you have no idea what the final scene will be. As your relationship with Marc-Antoine deepens, so does the need for absolute discretion. The walls of the Louvre have ears, and a whispered word in the wrong one can be a death sentence. This pressure forces you to become proficient in the more advanced and subtle arts of spycraft, moving beyond eavesdropping into the world of clandestine communication. You learn how to pass messages in plain sight, using a silent language known only to the initiated. Your instructor in this new curriculum is, surprisingly, not Madame de Clermont, but one of the Queen Mother's perfumers. He is a small, meticulous man from Florence named Lorenzo, who followed Catherine to France years ago. His official role is to create the bespoke scents for the royal family. Catherine was famous for her love of perfumes, particularly those made with orange blossom and other citrus notes. She even brought her own personal perfumer, Renata Bianco, with her from Italy, who became so famous in Paris that the French called him René le Florentin. Lorenzo is his successor, a master of a fragrant and secret world. Under the pretext of commissioning a new personal scent, you spend time in Lorenzo's workshop. It's a chamber filled with hundreds of tiny glass vials containing essential oils, resins, and exotic floral waters. It is here that Lorenzo reveals another layer of his craft. Perfume, he explains, can be a language. He shows you how it works. The Squadron has developed a simple, scent-based code. A handkerchief lightly scented with rosewater, for example, is the all-clear signal. It can be dropped, waved, or used to dab your brow. And to any observer, it's a perfectly normal gesture. But to a fellow Squadron member across the room, it means the coast is clear or the target is alone. Lavender has the opposite meaning. A handkerchief carrying the sharp, clean scent of lavender is a warning. It means danger. We are being watched. Or abort the plan. The intensity of the scent can also carry meaning. A faint whiff might mean be cautious, while a stronger, more obvious cloud of fragrance could signal get out now. This olfactory code is brilliant in its simplicity. It's untraceable and deniable. No one can prove that a scent constitutes a conspiracy. It's a form of communication that passes through the air, unseen and unrecorded. You begin to use this new skill in your interactions with Marc-Antoine, before meeting him in a secluded part of the garden. You will first pass by a pre-arranged spot where another Squadron member, a girl assigned to watch the area, is casually chatting. If she dabs her temple with a rose-scented cloth, you know it's safe to proceed. If she uses lavender, you know that one of the guys' men is nearby, and you must abort the meeting. The system is not just for warnings. It can be used to pass more complex information. A combination of scents can signify a specific person or place. For instance, the heavy, musky scent of ambergris might be used to denote the Duke of Guise, while a lighter scent of violet could refer to the king's sister, Marguerite. A message could be conveyed by the sequence of handkerchiefs a lady uses throughout an evening. It's a slow, cumbersome method, but for short, critical messages, it's perfectly secure. There is, of course, a strange and ironic downside to this reliance on perfume. The 16th century court, for all its opulence, had a notoriously poor grasp of hygiene. Bathing was infrequent, often considered unhealthy. Perfumes were used not just for pleasure, but as a powerful mask to cover a multitude of unpleasant body odors. This created a constant, overwhelming olfactory smog at any large gathering. Your scent-based signals had to be potent enough to cut through this background noise without being so strong as to draw suspicion. It's a comical but very real logistical challenge of your work. One evening, this silent language saves you. You have arranged a brief, late-night meeting with Marc-Antoine in the Royal Library, a place usually deserted after dark. As you approach the corridor leading to it, you see one of your sisters in arms, walking towards you. As she passes, she gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head and gracefully brings a lavender-scented handkerchief to her nose. The signal is clear and urgent. You don't break your stride. You continue walking past the library entrance as if you were heading to your own chambers. A few moments later, two of the Duke of Epernon's minions swagger out of the library, laughing. They had clearly been there for a private drink. If you had walked in, your secret rendezvous with Marc-Antoine would have been discovered by the king's favorites, a disaster that would have been impossible to explain away. You lean against a cold stone wall in a darkened hallway, your heart pounding with a mixture of fear and gratitude. You have been protected by a ghost, a message carried on a whisper of scent. This hidden world of signals, the language of fountains, the placement of a beauty mark, and now the code of perfumes is what keeps you alive. It is a constant, nerve-wracking performance, a life lived on two levels at once. You are a court lady, gliding through the palace, but you are also a node in a secret network, constantly broadcasting and receiving silent messages that spell the difference between safety and ruin. The air you breathe is not just air, it's a stream of data. Your service to the Queen Mother has granted you access to the innermost sanctum of the palace. But there is one place that remains shrouded in mystery and fear: Catherine's private study. The room often referred to in hushed whispers as her cabinet des secrets. It is here, legend says, that she consults with her infamous astrologer, Cosimo Ruggieri, and practices the dark art she supposedly brought with her from Italy. The rumors are wild and persistent that she can see the future in a drop of blood, that she can poison a man from 100 miles away, that she possesses a magic mirror that shows her the fate of her enemies. Most of the court dismisses these as Protestant propaganda or vulgar superstition. But you, who have seen the cold, hard pragmatism of the Queen, have always wondered how much of it is a performance designed to intimidate her rivals, and how much does she truly believe. You get your answer by accident. One afternoon, you are summoned to deliver an urgent message to Catherine. Her usual ladies-in-waiting are occupied, and you are told the Queen Mother is in her study and has asked not to be disturbed, but that this message is an exception. You have never been inside the room before. The guard at the door, one of her most trusted men, nods grimly and lets you pass. You push open the heavy, tapestry-covered door and step inside. The room is not what you expected. It is dark. The windows covered with heavy velvet curtains. The air is thick with the smell of old books, melting wax, and a strange, metallic scent you can't identify. For a moment, you think the room is empty. Then, you see her. Catherine is not at her desk. She is standing in the center of the room, her back to you, staring intently at a large, polished obsidian mirror held in an ornate silver frame. Standing beside her is a man you recognize instantly from court gossip: Ruggieri, his face half hidden in shadow. He is murmuring in low, guttural Italian. There are no demons, no smoking cauldrons. The scene is quiet, intense, and deeply strange. You freeze, not daring to make a sound, suddenly terrified that you have stumbled upon something you were never meant to see. You are about to back out when Catherine speaks, her voice calm, not turning around. You may enter. Mademoiselle, do not be afraid. She has seen you. But how? In the reflection of the mirror, the obsidian surface is dark, polished to a perfect blackness. It doesn't seem to reflect the room so much as absorb the light. It's a scrying mirror, an object used for divination. Staring into its depths was supposed to induce a trance-like state, allowing the seer to glimpse the future. You step forward, your heart pounding. On a table near them is a complex astrolabe and several hand-drawn astrological charts mapping the heavens at the exact moment of birth for her sons. These are not mere decorations. They are working documents, covered in notes and calculations. Catherine turns to face you, her expression unreadable. Ruggieri tells me the stars are not favorable for the Duke of Guise this month, she says, her tone matter of fact, as if discussing the weather. He is advised to avoid travel by water. Is this a genuine belief in his prediction, or is she simply telling you this, knowing you are a conduit for information, hoping the prediction will find its way to the ears of the guys and make him paranoid with Catherine? It is impossible to know. This reliance on astrology and other occult practices is one of the most debated aspects of her character. Was she a true believer, a product of a Renaissance Italy where Neoplatonists, magic, and science were inextricably linked? Or was she a master of psychological warfare, using the fears and superstitions of her age as another weapon in her arsenal? The consensus among most modern historians is that it was likely a bit of both. She was a woman of her time, a time when the line between astronomy and astrology was blurry, but she was also far too intelligent not to understand the political power of being perceived as someone with supernatural knowledge. You deliver your message, a dispatch from the governor of Lyon. She takes it and reads it, her focus shifting instantly from the celestial to the terrestrial. The moment of strange magic is broken. She gives you a reply to deliver, and you are dismissed. As you turn to leave, your eyes fall upon another object on a shelf, something that makes a chill run down your spine. It's a collection of small, ornate boxes, each labeled with the name of a different herb: belladonna, timlock, wolfsbane. These are the classic poisons of historical lore. Next to them are books on toxicology. This could be simple scholarly interest in botany and medicine, or it could be a poisoner's toolkit. The infamous poison cupboards of Catherine de' Medici are a staple of lurid historical fiction. But seeing this, you realize the rumor had to start somewhere. It may have been nothing more than a collection of medicinal herbs, but in the paranoid atmosphere of the court, a collection like this was all the proof her enemies needed. You leave the cabinet desk secrets and step back into the familiar corridors of the palace, feeling as though you have returned from another world. You have not seen the future, but you have seen the source of Catherine's formidable reputation. Her power, you realize, comes from her mastery of both the seen and the unseen worlds. She fights her battles with armies and treaties, but also with rumors, prophecies, and the deep-seated fears of her enemies. She understands that what people believe to be true is often more powerful than the truth itself. And you, her agent, are a purveyor of both. The political climate has grown so toxic, the factions so entrenched, that simple intelligence gathering is no longer enough. The Duke of Guise, emboldened by his popularity with the Parisian mob and his alliance with Spain, has become more than just a rival. He is a direct threat to the throne. Catherine and her son, King Henry III, decide that they need an agent on the inside of the Guise faction, and they choose you. The mission is the most dangerous you have ever been given. You are to stage a betrayal. You must publicly break with the Queen Mother and flee into the arms of her enemies, offering your services and secrets to the Guise. It's a classic false flag operation, a role so perilous that a single misstep will mean your certain death. The plan is orchestrated with theatrical precision. The first act is a public argument. During a court reception, you are to have a heated, whispered confrontation with Madame de Clermont. The subject is your growing sympathy for the plight of devout Catholics who feel the king has been too soft on heresy. The argument must be just loud enough to be overheard by a known Guise sympathizer, a talkative countess with a penchant for gossip. You play your part perfectly. You accuse Madame de Clermont of serving a queen who has forgotten her duty to God. Her response is cold fury. She dismisses you on the spot, telling you that your presence is no longer welcome at court. You storm out of the reception, feigning tears of righteous anger. The countess, as predicted, watches the entire exchange with wide, greedy eyes. The news of your disgrace spreads through the palace like wildfire. To your former sisters in the Squadron, you are now a traitor. They look at you with contempt and pity, their faces cold masks. This is the hardest part of the act, the genuine isolation. You are utterly alone. Your only lifeline a secret. Prearranged emergency signal a single. Pressed Edelweiss flower to be left at a specific public fountain that you pray you will never have to use. The second act is the approach. After a week of lying low, letting the scandal marinate, You request a private audience with the Duke of Guise's sister, the formidable Duchess of Montpensier. She is a political brain of the family, even more radical and ruthless than her brother. She receives you in her Parisian townhouse, the grim, fortress-like building that serves as the Guise headquarters. The Duchess is a severe, imposing woman. She listens to your story with cold, skeptical eyes. You tell her that you can no longer serve a queen who allies herself with heretics and surrounds the king with decadent minions. You speak of your conscience. You offer her your knowledge of the Queen Mother's inner circle, her methods, her agents, the state of her health, her secret fears. Why should we trust you, the Duchess asks, her voice like chipping ice. You have been one of her creatures for years. This could be a trick. Because I have nothing left to lose. You reply, letting a note of desperation creep into your voice. She has cast me out. I have no home, no future. My only hope is to find a patron who truly serves the cause of the true faith. To prove your worth, you give them a piece of genuine, but carefully selected, intelligence. You reveal the name of a low-level spy Catherine has placed in the Spanish embassy. This person is a real but minor agent, a calculated sacrifice to establish your bona fides. It works. After days of vetting you, of having their own agents watch your every move, they slowly begin to trust you. You are given a small room in the townhouse and put to work, analyzing reports from their own network of spies. It's a surreal experience. You are now looking at the world from the other side of the mirror. You see the reports about the king's movements, the assessments of the Queen Mother's influence. You even read a file on the flying squadron, filled with a mixture of accurate information and wild, exaggerated propaganda. There's a bizarrely specific but false rumor in the file claiming that Catherine's ladies communicate by the way they arrange the pleats on their skirts. It's a reminder that even your enemies are struggling to separate fact from fiction. You spend months in this grey, paranoid world. You learn the rhythms of the Guise household, their code, their secret meeting places. You pass information back to Catherine through a dead-drop system of breathtaking simplicity and dress. Once a week, you attend Mass at a small church. During the collection, you drop a coin into the bag. The coin has been hollowed out, a tiny, tightly rolled piece of paper tucked inside. The acolyte collecting the money is one of Catherine's agents. Your information is vital. You report on the Duke's growing military strength, his secret stockpile of weapons within Paris, and his plan, known as the Day of the Barricades, to incite a popular uprising and seize control of the city. You provide the names of the militia captains, the locations of the planned barricades. You are a consul in the heart of their conspiracy. The mental toll is immense. You live every day with the fear of discovery. A single slip of the tongue, a moment of hesitation, could expose you. You are surrounded by fanatics who would not hesitate to kill you. You miss the camaraderie of the squadron, the familiar scent of Lorenzo's perfumes, the sound of Marc-Antoine's lute. You are a ghost, haunting your own life. You have betrayed everyone you know to serve a queen you're not even sure you can trust, all for the sake of a kingdom that seems determined to tear itself apart. Your loyalty has been twisted into a performance of treason, and you pray you can survive until the final curtain falls. The years are taking their toll, not just on you, but on the great matriarch herself, Catherine de Medici, the woman who has been the unmovable center of the French court for 3 decades, is fading. The relentless stress of holding a fractured kingdom together has etched itself onto her face and stooped her shoulders. She is increasingly plagued by illness, and her famous energy is beginning to wane. You, now restored to your position at court after the successful but harrowing infiltration of the Guise faction, witness the slow, melancholic twilight of her power. Her son, King Henry III, once reliant on her counsel, now increasingly pushes her aside. He is a king in his own right, surrounded by his own advisors and favorites. He still respects his mother, but he is weary of living in her shadow. The dynamic at the royal council meetings has shifted. Where Catherine's word was once law, It is now merely an opinion, often listened to with polite impatience before being ignored. You see the flicker of frustration and hurt in her eyes as her son dismisses one of her carefully considered strategies in favor of a rash plan proposed by one of his minions. The Flying Squadron, her personal intelligence service, is also becoming a relic of a bygone era. The missions are fewer, their purpose less clear. The great ideological struggle between the Guys and the Bourbons, which defined your early years at court, has now become a direct and personal power struggle between two men, Duke Henry of Guise and King Henry III. It is a battle of egos, and Catherine, for the first time, seems unable to control the key players. You watch as the Duke of Guise, now known as the King of Paris for his immense popularity with the city's mob, grows ever more arrogant. He ignores the king's orders, acts as a de facto ruler, and makes it clear that he believes he would be a better king. The information you provided from your time inside his faction has proven invaluable, confirming his treasonous ambitions. But the king seems paralyzed, unwilling or unable to act decisively against such a popular rival. Catherine, in her waning strength, advises caution, negotiation, a political solution. She has seen too much bloodshed and knows that a direct confrontation could lead to a catastrophic civil war. The king, however, is tired of his mother's cautious games. He is listening to younger, more aggressive counselors who tell him that the only way to deal with the Guise threat is to cut off the head of the snake. The breaking point comes in the winter of 1588. The king summons the Duke of Guise to a council meeting at the Chateau d'Iberville. It is a trap. As the Duke enters the king's antechamber, he is ambushed by the king's personal bodyguards, the 45, and stabbed to death. The following day, the Duke's brother, the Cardinal of Guise, is also arrested and assassinated. The news of the assassination hits the court like a thunderclap. King Henry III, triumphant, storms into his mother's sick room to announce his victory. "I have killed the King of Paris," he boasts. "Now, I am the only king in France." According to eyewitnesses, Catherine's reaction was not one of pride or relief. It was one of horror. Lying in her bed, weak with illness, she reportedly whispered, "God grant that you have not made yourself king of nothing. My son, you have cut, but now you must sow." She knew instantly what her son, in his arrogance, had failed to see that in assassinating the Guise, he had not solved his problem, but had instead unleashed a firestorm of vengeance. The Catholic League in the city of Paris would now rise in open, furious rebellion against the royal murderer. In this moment, you see the end of an era. The Queen's power, built on decades of subtle maneuvering, intelligence, and a deep understanding of human weakness, has been rendered obsolete by a single act of brutal, short-sighted violence. Her life's work of holding the center, of playing the factions against each other to preserve the crown, has been undone by her own son. There is a strange and poignant historical footnote to her final days. Confined to her bed at Blois, Catherine's physicians diagnosed her with a severe lung infection, likely pleurisy. As her condition worsened, she asked for a priest to hear her final confession. The priest who arrived was a young, unknown cleric. When Catherine asked his name, he replied that he was Julian de Saint-Germain. Upon hearing the name Saint-Germain, Catherine was said to have gasped in terror. Her astrologer, Ruggieri, had famously prophesied years before that she would die near Saint-Germain. For her entire life, she had meticulously avoided the church of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois is in the Faubourg Saint-Germain in Paris, believing she could cheat fate. Now, in a cruel twist of irony, fate had come to her deathbed in the form of an unknown priest. Whether this story is true or a later embellishment, it perfectly captures the essence of her life, a long, brilliant, and ultimately futile struggle against the inevitable. As Catherine fades, so does the squadron's purpose. There are no more orders, no more secret missions. You and the other remaining ladies are left adrift in a court that is preparing for all-out war. The power of the Queen is gone, Her era of secrets and whispers is over. The future of France will now be decided by the sword. Catherine de' Medici dies in her bed at the Château de Beauvoir just days into the new year of 1589. Her death, which would have once shaken the foundations of Europe, is almost an afterthought. The kingdom is already consumed by the firestorm her son ignited. The Catholic League, now led by the murdered Duke of Guise's furious brother, has declared open war on King Henry III. Paris is in full rebellion. The king, once the ruler of a great nation, is now a fugitive, his authority barely extending beyond the few towns still loyal to him. The flying squadron is officially disbanded. You are a ship without a rudder, a spy without a spymaster. Your loyalty was to Catherine, and she is gone. You are free, but you are also unemployed and vulnerable in the most dangerous political climate imaginable. Some of the other ladies make quiet arrangements to retire to family estates or marry minor nobles, disappearing from the historical stage. But you, who have been at the center of the web for so long, are given one last, unofficial mission. It does not come from the king, but from a small, shadowy group of Catherine's former advisors, the politiques, who are now desperately trying to salvage a future for France. Your target is Henry of Navarre, the same man who narrowly survived the street, Bartholomew's Day Massacre, who was forced to convert to Catholicism, who later escaped and renounced that conversion to lead the Huguenot forces. In a twist of fate so ironic it could only be real, this Protestant leader is now, by law, the next in line to the French throne. King Henry II has no children, making Navarre his legitimate heir. The king, in a desperate act of self-preservation, has done the unthinkable. He has allied himself with his former enemy. The Catholic King of France has joined forces with the Protestant heir to fight against the Catholic League. It is a mind-boggling alliance that scrambles all the old loyalties. Your mission is to travel to Henry of Navarre's military camp and provide a thorough, unbiased assessment of the man. Catherine spent her life fighting, managing, and sometimes protecting him. In her final days, she knew he was the likely future. The politiques need to know, is he a man they can trust? Is he a sectarian warrior who will try to force Protestantism on the entire kingdom? Or is he a pragmatist who can unite it in essence? They are asking you to complete Catherine's final, most important piece of intelligence work. You travel south, through a war-torn countryside. Your fine courtly gowns replaced with the simple, durable clothes of a merchant's wife. Navarre's camp is nothing like the opulent, perfumed world at the Louvre. It is a sprawling, muddy, and energetic city of tents. It is filled with tough, battle-hardened Huguenot soldiers, German mercenaries, and a surprising number of moderate Catholic nobles who have decided that loyalty to the legitimate royal succession is more important than religious purity. The atmosphere is not one of piety, it is one of purpose, and at its center is Henry himself. He is not a handsome man. He has a long nose and a weathered face, and he is famous for his rustic, often unkempt appearance. There's a well-known, unlikely true, anecdote that his own soldiers complained about his smell, as he was a man of the saddle who cared little for the courtly niceties of bathing. He is the absolute antithesis of the perfumed mignon. You secure an audience with him, using the credentials provided by the politiques. He receives you not in a grand tent, but sitting on a log by a campfire, cleaning his fingernails with a dagger. He is informal, witty, and has an earthy charm that is surprisingly disarming. He looks at you with sharp, intelligent eyes that miss nothing. He remembers you from court. One of the Queen Mother's little birds, he says, with a wry grin, not a hint of malice in his voice. Come to see if the old wolf has grown new teeth. You spend several days in his camp. You speak with his generals, his advisors, and his ordinary soldiers. You see a side of the conflict you never saw from the palace. And you study the man himself. You see his military genius and his personal courage, leading his men from the front. But you also see his profound political intelligence. You watch him share a joke with a grim-faced German mercenary. Listen intently to the grievance of a Catholic nobleman, and clap a Huguenot soldier on the back like an old friend. He is a master of managing people. In a private conversation, you finally ask the critical question, phrasing it as Catherine would have. If you become king, you ask, what will become of the faith of France, the faith of Paris? He stops smiling. His expression becomes serious, pragmatic. Madame, he says, Paris is well worth a mass. It's a cryptic, brilliant, and deeply shocking statement. In that single sentence, he lays out his entire philosophy and predicts his own future. He is telling you that he is willing to convert to Catholicism again if that is the political price for securing the throne and uniting the kingdom. He is signaling that for him, the peace and stability of France are more important than his personal religious convictions. It is the ultimate act of a politique. You realize you are looking at Catherine de Medici's true successor, not in blood, but in spirit. He is the ultimate pragmatist, a man willing to do what is necessary to end the decades of religious strife. He is the gamble she never got to make, but that you now know will pay off. Your final mission is over. You have looked into the eyes of the next king and seen the reflection of the old queen. Before your report on Henry of Navarre can have any real impact, history accelerates once again. In August of 1589, while laying siege to Paris, King Henry is assassinated. A radical young Dominican friar, believing the king to be a traitor to faith for allying with a Protestant, gains access to the royal camp and stabs him. The last Valois king is dead, and the final, result wished of fate comes to pass. Henry of Navarre, the Huguenot leader from the tiny kingdom and the Pyrenees, is now, officially, King Henry IV of France. The news throws you and the entire court into a state of suspended animation. The old world is officially gone. The Valois dynasty, which ruled for over 2 centuries, has ended not with a bang, but with a whimper and a fanatic's knife. A new era is beginning, and you are standing right on the seam between the two. It is in this strange, uncertain interlude that you finally have time to reflect on the institution to which you dedicated your life, the Flying Squadron. With Catherine dead and the court in disarray, the secrets and legends begin to spill out. You start to hear different versions of the story you live, and you are forced to confront the most difficult question of all: was the squadron real? Of course, you know it was. You were in it. You attended the secret briefings. You learned the scent-based codes. You undertook the missions. You have the scars, emotional, if not physical, to prove it. But you come to realize that the reality of the squadron and the legend of the squadron were two very different things. And Catherine, in her genius, deliberately cultivated the confusion between them. You speak with a retired court chronicler, a man who has seen it all and is now trying to write the history of his time. He offers a cynical, but compelling, perspective. My dear, he says, his old eyes twinkling, the less quadrillon volant was the most effective weapon the Queen Mother ever deployed, precisely because it may not have existed in the way everyone imagined. He explains his theory. There was, he concedes, a group of elite, intelligent ladies in waiting whom the Queen trusted implicitly. You were one of them. She used you with her eyes and ears. She taught you to be observant, to report what you heard. This much is fact. But the salacious parts of the legend, the idea of a formalized troop of honey-trapped spies, systematically using seduction as state policy, were almost entirely the creation of her enemies. Huguenot propagandists, eager to paint the Italian queen as a decadent, immoral foreigner, invented the most lurid stories. They took the reality of a few high-profile scandals, like Isabelle de la Muille's affair with Conde, and extrapolated it into a grand conspiracy. They created the image of a squadron of royal courtesans to demonize Catherine and her court. And here, the chronicler argues, was Catherine's true genius. Instead of fighting the rumor, she leaned into it. She never acknowledged the squadron's existence, but she never strenuously denied it either. She allowed the myth to grow because it served her purposes perfectly. The legend of the Flying Squadron became a powerful tool of intimidation for an ambassadors, ambitious nobles, And plotting generals all became more cautious, more paranoid, because they believed the beautiful woman they were dancing with might be a trained spy reporting their every word back to the Queen. The fear of the Squadron was as powerful, if not more powerful, than the Squadron itself. It was a self-perpetuating intelligence network, powered by the paranoia of its targets. You begin to see the truth in this. You think back on your missions. How many times did your success depend not on a brilliant deception, but on a man's foolish willingness to believe he was important enough to be the target of a beautiful spy you charmed the Baron de Courtauld, not because you were a master of seduction, but because he was a vain man who wanted to believe a court beauty found him fascinating. The myth did half the work for you. This leads to the great, unanswerable question that historians will argue over for the next 500 years. Where was the line between Catherine's formal intelligence network and the informal, organic gossip of the court? Was every lady-in-waiting a potential agent, or was it just a small, core group? The historical record is deliberately, maddeningly ambiguous. There are no official charters, no payrolls, no graduation certificates for the flying squadron. Its existence is proven only by the results it achieved in the terror it inspired in its enemies. It was, in the truest sense, a ghost organization. You realized that you were not just a member of a spy ring. You were an actor in a grand piece of political theater, a living embodiment of a legend. Your identity was to fold you were a real agent undertaking real missions. But you were also a symbol, a walking, talking piece of psychological warfare. Catherine de Medici did not just command a group of spies, she weaponized a rumor. And you were its beautiful, dangerous, and ultimately ephemeral face. The dust of war and succession begins to settle. King Henry IV, true to his word, converts to Catholicism with the famously pragmatic declaration, "Paris is well worth a mess." The act breaks the back of the Catholic League's resistance. The city of Paris, weary of war, finally opens its gates to him. A new age has begun, an age of reconstruction, of fragile peace, and of a new kind of court. The world you knew, the court of the Valois, is gone forever. Henry IV's court is less formal, more militaristic, and filled with his own loyal followers, the men who fought alongside him in the long, lean years of the war. The intricate, perfumed web of Catherine de Medici's influence has been swept away, replaced by the gruff camaraderie of the battlefield. There is no place for a flying squadron here. Your tradecraft, once essential, is now obsolete. It is time for you to choose your own ending. The life of a spy is not one that comes with a pension or a quiet retirement party. You have a few options, each a path leading away from the shadows. The first, and perhaps the simplest, is to disappear. The small fortune you have discreetly accumulated over the years, gifts from the Queen Mother, payments for special services, is enough to secure a comfortable, if modest, future. You could buy a small property in the countryside, far from Paris and its ghosts. You could live out your days in quiet anonymity. The woman with a mysterious past that no one in the village can quite figure out. The thought is tempting. The silence, the peace, the chance to live a life where words have only one meaning. The second option is married. Your service to the crown, though secret, has earned you the quiet gratitude of powerful men. An advantageous match could be arranged. You could marry a wealthy merchant, a respectable provincial nobleman, or even one of Henry IV's newly promoted generals. It would mean security, a title, a place in the new social order. You would become a wife, a mother, the mistress of a grand house. You would have to bury your past completely to become the person your husband and society expect you to be. It is the conventional happy ending, a final, lifelong performance. Then there is the third path, the one that calls to the part of you that still yearns for the game. You could offer your services to the new king. Henry IV is a pragmatist. He knows the value of good intelligence. Your skills are rare. You could find a new role in his nascent intelligence service, perhaps as a trainer for a new generation of agents. or as an analyst. Your sharp mind perfectly suited to finding the patterns in the noise. It would be a life of continued service. But it would be a choice. Your own choice. Not a command from a queen. You think of Marc-Antoine de Villain, the lutenist with the kind eyes. He survived the wars. His moderation and integrity have earned him a place of respect in the new court. He has made it known, through a trusted intermediary, that he has not forgotten you. He represents a different kind of future, one based not on duty or ambition, but on a genuine, quiet affection. But to be with him would require a final, complete confession. It would mean telling him the whole truth of your life, the deceptions and the manipulations. It is the most honest path, and therefore, the most terrifying. What do you choose? The story doesn't tell us. Your trial, if it ever existed, ends here. You, who were a ghost in the service of a queen, now slip into the ghost mists of history. Perhaps you found peace in a garden, power in a marriage, purpose in continued service, or love with a gentle musician. Your legacy, like that of the Squadron itself, is one of whisper and speculation. You were a witness to, and a participant in, one of the most turbulent periods in French history. You saw the heights of opulence and the depths of brutality. You served a queen who was both a monster and a savior, a political genius who fought to hold her kingdom together with every weapon at her disposal, including you. You were one of the quiet, unnamed women who moved behind the thrones and tapestries of power, whose real stories are so often lost in the grand narratives of kings and battles. You are a secret. Then now, your story is over. And so, the story fades, like the last notes of a lute drifting from an open window on a warm evening. The faces of the court, Catherine, with her unreadable eyes, Henry, with his wry grin, the ghosts of the guys and the minions all blur and soften, receding into the deep, quiet tapestries of the past. The echoes of their ambitions and their fears grow faint, replaced by a gentle, peaceful silence. You can feel the weight of the secrets you carried beginning to lift, dissolving like mist in the morning sun. The tension in your shoulders eases. Your mind lets go of the plots and the whispered warnings. The world of the Louvre, with its cold stone and flickering torchlight, gives way to a warmer, softer darkness, the gentle and welcoming darkness of sleep. You are no longer a spy, no longer a courtier. You are simply here, safe and sound, drifting on a quiet river of dreams. There are no more messages to decode, no more dangers to anticipate. There is only this moment of profound and peaceful rest. The long night at court is over. It is time to sleep. The end of the article. Good night.